Bai is a lonely loser who would rather die a gooner than get an actual girlfriend, but everything changes when all the popular girls want him for themselves. It all started. One day Bai was attending to his vice president duties. He found a letter from a secret admirer asking for them to meet, but Bai had no idea how to deal with the situation since he had zero experience with girls. The secret admirer turned out to be Yoyo, so Bai tried to weasel out of it by bringing up the council activities. However, Yoyo threatened to rip his joystick from his dangle region if he didn't listen to her. She placed him under her chesticles so he wouldn't escape. Then, she asked him to be her boyfriend. At that moment, there was only one thought in Baiko's head.
No! God, please, no!
She was head of the archery club, so if he refused her, he would never leave there alive. However, he thought up a brilliant plan and was about to lay it on her when he heard another voice stealing his line. The most popular girl, Ningya, was using the "I already have a crush" line to reject her 30th love confession that day. Yoeo hoped Baiko wasn't about to give the same lame excuse, making Baiko wonder what kind of bad timing that was. Unfortunately, Baiko couldn't think of a better excuse, so Yoeo asked who he's crushing on, threatening to confess every day if he didn't drop a name. Baiko folded under the pressure and ended up naming Ningyi. However, Yoyo was relieved since his negative Riz would never stand a chance with her, so she promised to make him fall in love with her in the future. That evening, Baiko wonders how he managed to screw up a rejection when the council president Tong Sin walked in with a skirt shorter than your attention span. She sat on his desk to ask what he was doing there so late, but Baiko was concerned about what trick she was trying to play. Tong Sin licked her lips as she offered him some coffee as a reward, but Baiko rejected it, knowing this can't cook. Tong Sin turns on the guilt trip, accusing him of not appreciating her kindness, and Baiko is helpless to this attack. Once again, he folds and humbly accepts his poison drink.
And I've decided that I want to die.
However, before he can drink it, he notices another letter and wonders who it's from. At the same moment, Tong Sin asks him what he thinks of love letters. When he wonders if she knows about Yoyo, she whispers in his ears and asks about the one right in front of them. Suddenly, they hear someone outside asking for President Tong Sin. Tong Sin hugs Bai tighter and starts fiddling with his button. Then she tells the person outside to come in. A shy boy walks in with a letter till he sees they're about to discover how babies are made and leaves. Tong Sin sighs in relief and says her problem has been solved, but Bai still hasn't caught on. She hides the button she stole from him and assures Bai will never understand women. Bai tells her to think about his safety, so she apologizes and offers him some incense. The alarms in his head start ringing as he wonders what she's up to now, so she grabs his hand and asks if he thinks she's some She then tells him to cover his eyes and warns him not to peek if he enjoys having two balls. She then ties her hair into a bun, but not for what you're thinking. She starts taking off her clothes, making Bai wonder what all that strange noise is. Tong Sin finally turns him around and tells him to open up as she reveals a black dress. Bai gets oppressed by the view of her snow globes, so he asks why she'd risk changing in the office. Tong Sin explains that she had the outfit on under her uniform the entire time. She tries to give him a demonstration, but Bai assures her his mind beat her to it. When he tells her to be on her way, she remembers the button she stole and scolds him for being careless enough to lose it. She then hooks him up with her brooch and finally leaves him to finish her job for her. When she leaves, she rejoices over finally getting his button. Back in the office, Bai opens up the letter and finds an invitation to a cafe from none other than Ning Yi. He can't believe his eyes and wonders if this is yet another confession. Later, Bai meets her at the cafe and asks why she needs to see him. She reveals that Yoyo had played the jealous girlfriend and force-fed her, all the reasons why they can't be together. Bai does a spit take as he tries to clear up the misunderstanding, but Ning guesses he just used her as an excuse to refuse Yoyo. Bai is relieved and wonders why he thought someone of such caliber would want to confess to him. He apologizes for using her as an excuse, but Ning Yi suddenly asks him to be her boyfriend. When Bai starts experiencing some technical difficulties, Ning Yi explains that she only needs him to pretend to be one. Since Yoyo won't give up even after being rejected, she'll have no choice to third couple. Bai isn't convinced, so Ning Yi tells him to think about it and give her an answer in 2 days. The next morning, Bai wakes up to the best alarm clock there is, except it's his sister. He freaks out and tells her he hadn't showered so he stinks, but she assures him he smells good.
Stop it. Get some help.
Baekhyeo tries to leave her behind, but she keeps sticking to him and asking for some of his warmth. Later, she switches to maid mode and serves him some scrambled eggs. While they eat, Baekhyeo asks what she would do to reject someone who confesses to her and refuses to give up. She gets shy and reveals that she'd say she has a boyfriend and show them a picture of her brother. That crimson red flag flies over his head as he wonders if Ningyi's deal is the only way out. When Baekhyeo tries to leave for school, he finds Yoeo waiting for him in her archery clothes. He thinks his life might be in danger and tries to run for it, but she dropkicks him and puts him on a leash. Thankfully, she only wanted him to attend an event at the archery club as their first date. Suddenly, Yoeo spots a guy who looks AI-generated and glares at him, but when Baekhyeo tries to ask who he is, she calls him darling and asks him to go backstage with her. She threatens that if he doesn't play along, he'll end up a shooting prop. Then she hands him her bag and tells him to wait for her. The living deepfake walks up to Baekhyeo and smugly introduces himself as the archery captain of the rival school. He figures Yoeo must have roped Baekhyeo into coming and encourages him to leave if he isn't actually interested in archery. But Baekhyeo begins to sense something's off. He rejects Lingu's offer, insisting he's representing the student council, and walks off while Yoeo secretly watches him and smiles. Later, Baekhyeo watches as Yoeo does her thing, wondering when he'll be released from the torture. Yoeo's bag falls over and he discovers her secret stash of steamy magazines. Suddenly, he hears some voices coming from the room beside him and goes to investigate. There, he overhears Lingu and a group of girls talking smack about Yoeo. The girls offer to make Yoeo pay for slapping him, but he tells them to let it go. Yoeo finds Baekhyeo eavesdropping and asks if he's secretly peeking at other girls. When Baekhyeo says he's seen enough girls already, Yoeo praises him since she's the only one worthy of his gaze. She decides to reward him by letting him put her socks on, but despite how he looks, Baekhyeo doesn't have a foot fetish. Unfortunately, he develops one after Yoeo points one of her arrows at him. He becomes the blackmailed prince, charming to her pirated Cinderella, just to make her happy, so she thanks him for coming with her. Baekhyeo asks if she knows Lingu well, so Yoeo tries to cover up by asking if he's jealous of him. However, she reveals that the previous day, Lingu had approached her after they finished setting up for the stage event. He tried to pin her to the wall and act sly, so she helped him activate his face muscles. She doesn't know if he has run his mouth to anyone else, but some people seemed angry at her at the event today. Before Baekhyeo can respond, Yoeo has already switched to snooze mode, though she's only pretending. Baekhyeo takes a closer look and realizes something. He can finally slip away without any trouble. Yoeo stops him before he gets far and scolds him for not carrying her home like a true gentleman. Baekhyeo wonders if she's being so try-hard thanks to those brain-rot magazines, so Yoeo gets embarrassed that her little secret is out and tells him to head back alone. As Baekhyeo heads back, he wonders why Lingu would lie to the others, and decides he needs to keep the girls from troubling Yoeo. That's when he realizes that Lingu had been trying to get rid of him the entire time so the girls could have her alone. Meanwhile, the girls had just ambushed Yoeo, who didn't understand what they could possibly want with her. The leader slapped Yoeo as payback for Lingu, so Yoeo retaliated by saying trash likes to stick together. This angered the mean girl, who hoped to knock a tooth out with her next attack, but she was stopped by Baekhyeo, who tried to tell her she was being manipulated. The girl violated his face and said it was none of his business, making Baekhyeo consider if it would be rude to choke the life out of her, but Yoeo begged him to butt out of it. Baekhyeo agreed and picked her up to leave, so she smiled happily as she rested safely on his chest. The Slapmaster 3000 insisted they weren't going anywhere, so Baekhyeo called out for Lingu to stop hiding. Lingu appeared and tried to push the blame on the girls, but Baekhyeo decked him in the face. He then informed him of the CCTV footage he had of his little stunt yesterday, so Lingu immediately begged for forgiveness, exposing the truth to the girls. Yoeo finally walked off triumphantly with Baekhyeo. Later, she handed him an ice coke to apply on his face, so he doesn't have to explain the slap marks. Yoeo asks how Baekhyeo knew he was behind it, and Baekhyeo explains that anyone with that cheap haircut is likely a criminal. Yoeo teases him for acting as the hero saving the beauty, so Baekhyeo stares deep into her eyes and asks where the beauty is. Yoeo manages to ignore the diss and strengthen her decision to chase after him. Later that day, Baekhyio's phone blows up with angry texts from Yoeo. wondering why he ran away from her earlier. Before he could respond, his sister demanded to know if he was chatting with bad girls again, but he assured her he was shopping online. She wasn't buying it, so she grabbed the phone to see for herself, but she got upset when she saw his password wasn't her birthday. To teach him a lesson, she decided to keep his phone and tried to hide it between her pleasure hills, but the phone rudely dropped to the floor immediately, calling her flat in several languages. Bai Qiao quickly changed the subject and said they could do anything she liked. Unfortunately, he didn't expect to find himself on her lap, wondering if they were really related. However, she insists that cleaning people's ears is very satisfying and licks her lips as she starts to go in. After some rounds, she blows into his ears, which makes him turn around and discover her victorious secret. When she wonders what the problem is, he faces the other way and says he'd rather go back to talking to bad girls. Just then, he notices some messages from Yoyo and Tong Xin. Exhausted from the woes of forming a harem, Bai Qiao says he doesn't want to go to school the next day. His sister reminds him that the next day is Saturday, which means he forgot about her dance, but Bai Qiao saves himself by claiming that's the reason he won't go to school. After promising her he'll be there, she runs to bed, leaving him to deal with the other pests in his life. Tong Xin tells him she'll come over tomorrow and play with him, but Bai Qiao realizes he can't let his sister find out or he's toast. The next morning, his sister texts him that she'd be expecting him that night, so Bai Qiao boasts of how smart he is for fleeing his house early so Tong Xin wouldn't find him. Unfortunately, he spoke too soon as a familiar pair of chess balls pressed into his back, and it turned out to be Tong Xin. Later, they both sit down over carnival food when Bai Qiao asks how she knew he'd be in the library. Tong Xin asks him if he knows how rabbits are easily caught, but Bai Qiao hides behind his food so he doesn't stare right at her bubble chest. That's when she reveals that rabbits are too timid. One small sound from the hunter, and they'll rush to other places, so the hunter only needs to study its habits before setting a trap. She then refers to Bai Qiao as her little rabbit, making him realize he was set up this entire time. Bai Qiao tries to taunt her by saying she's too smart to find a boyfriend, but she doesn't mind as long as the guy she likes can't escape from her. Bai Qiao gets shivers down his spine, so he asks what exactly she wants from him, and she says she wants to go on a blind date with him. Bai Qiao immediately says his goodbyes, claiming he's not feeling so well, so Tong Xin trips him and puts his hand on her cannonball, threatening to scream out assault. Bai Qiao tries to call her bluff, but she grabs him by his invisible bunny ears and asks if he really wants to try her, making Bai Qiao suddenly feel much better. Later, she explains that she only needs him to meet someone, so he doesn't have to be so nervous, but he tells her he's been getting death threats ever since she used him the other day. Tong Xin offers to bribe him with something no man can resist, the new GTA 6 game. Bai Qiao wonders how she could possibly have it before it comes out. Then he takes her up on her offer and begs for a date. On the way, Bai Qiao asks who the person they're meeting is, so she explains that he's some rich kid that has been doing business with her family. One night, their parents got drunk and suggested they were both old enough to get pimped. Bai Qiao asks why she doesn't just reject him, so she grabs onto him and says she actually hasn't tried it yet. Suddenly, a voice calls out for her, surprised to see her there. It turns out to be Ning Yag, who says she forgot to give Bai Qiao some coffee coupons, telling him not to forget to redeem them. That's when he remembers he was supposed to give her an answer today. To make matters worse, his sister reminded him to attend her event at the exact same time. Tong Xin wonders how Bai Qiao is so close to the queen of their school behind her back, but Bai Qiao grabs her to hurry it up to her blind date. They arrive at a store to find Levi Ackerman with Nerd Rise. He asks what Bai Qiao is doing there, so she says she bumped into him outside, and since he's the vice president, she invited him to join them, hoping he doesn't mind. Chen Yu claims any friend of Tong Xin's is a friend of his, but deep down he wishes Bai Qiao would get his slimy hands off his girl. Some moments later, Tong Xin laments bringing him more onto the date since Bai Qiao is busy flirting with the enemy instead of her. She tries to take charge and feed him some of his food so he can have stamina for other activities later. This pisses Chen Yu off, so he stands up and invites Bai Qiao to have drinks while he secretly plants his wallet on Bai Qiao. Bai Qiao tries to refuse, but Tong Xin thinks it's the perfect opportunity to act drunk and fall into Bai Qiao's lap. She insists they have the drink, which surprises Bai Qiao, who's never seen her drink before, while Chen Yu grins suspiciously. They eat the glasses and Tong Xin prepares to put on the performance of her life when she suddenly notices Bai Qiao already out for the count. Chen Yu claims he had no idea Bai Qiao was a lightweight and suggests they take him home to rest and then find a place to talk. But Tong-sin says she's not interested in talking till Baiko's okay. Chen-yu agrees and offers to pay the bill while Tong-sin tries to help Baiko up. Suddenly, Chen-yu's wallet falls from his pocket just as Chen-yu starts searching for it. Chen-yu picks up the wallet and accuses Baiko of hiding it away, warning him that stealing is a crime. Since Baiko is still drunk, he doesn't understand what's going on, so Chen-yu threatens to get the police involved if he wants to play dumb. Tong-sin warns Chen-yu that she'll embarrass him if he keeps acting up, but when Chen-yu insists that Baiko is a corrupt guy, Tong-sin tosses her wine at him. When he asks who she thinks she is, she explains she doesn't care what he thinks of her, but she won't tolerate him playing tricks on Baiko, especially ones that could cost him his future. If she hadn't found out about this early, she would have buried his body under a bridge, so Chen-yu finally gets the message. She then pulls Baiko close and says it's all her fault, and helps him up to get out of there. Later, Baiko wakes up on Tong-sin's lap and asks what the time is. When she says 4, he panics, thinking he's missed his sister's dance, but Tong-sin warns him he's too easy to fool. She advises him not to trust people who are wearing masks and smiling, including her. Baiko thanks her for the tips, so she smushes his face with her coconuts and offers to make a deal with him. Baiko quickly jumps up and says he's heading to the theater, so Tong-sin grabs his arm and says she'll be coming with. When Baiko tries to tell her he's only got one ticket, she pulls out 2 VIP tickets that she got from her dad's friend. She claims it was all a coincidence, but Baiko can smell. With no other choice, he lets her tag along, but she insists on putting her hand on his back, claiming he's not sober yet. Suddenly, she takes off her shoes, hoping to see Baiko's cultured reaction to her bare feet. Later at the theater, Tong-sin laments over learning nothing about Baiko since he offered her his shoes instead of asking for her feet. Finder ID. Baiko nervously watches his sister's performance till he notices her dress getting unraveled, causing her to face the other way and ruin the whole routine. As Baiko wonders what could possibly have happened, a blonde mystery girl watches from behind the curtains. Afterward, Lulu stays backstage while the winners of the tournament are announced. Baiko shows up to check on her, so Lulu runs to hug him, lamenting how their efforts have gone to waste. Suddenly, Tong-sin shows up and starts giving Lulu a pep talk about putting effort in. Lulu immediately tries to protect her brother from the White Hair Witch, while Tong-sin insists that since she's the president's sister, she's also her sister. Baiko starts to sweat buckets as the girls face off, remembering that the last time his sister met Tong-sin, she turned into Michael Myers. Lulu drags her brother to go home with her, but Tong-sin pulls him back, assuring her she's very good to Baiko. The girls demand to know who he chooses, but when Baiko sees those massive milk jugs, he asks them why they can't all get along. Lulu almost loses it when she sees the White Witch holding Baiko's hand and insists that he only belongs to her. Suddenly, another lunatic shows up and calls out for Lulu, happy that they'll get to work together again since they lost the tournament. Wook Seo-won says it's finally nice to meet her brother, since Lulu won't shut up about him. When she sees Tong-sin, she assumes it must be Baiko's girlfriend and asks if she can have Lulu for some hours. Lulu tells her to stop and drags her away to stop being a nuisance. Lulu tells Baiko to wait for her to get changed, leaving him alone with Wook Seo-won. Baiko remembers his conversation with Tong-sin, who suspected it was Wook Seo-won that tampered with Lulu's costume, since she seemed unusually happy to come in 4th place. Baiko struggles to think of the right way to get her to confess, so he asks about the wardrobe malfunction. But Wook Seo-won nervously says she has no idea how it happened. Baiko can tell she's capping hard. Then his phone suddenly starts ringing. It turns out to be Yoyo, who's been getting aired all day, so she asks him where he is. When he tells her he's in the theater, Baiko figures he can use the call to fool Wook Seo-won. He starts talking about the CCTV surveillance backstage, but this completely throws Yoyo off guard. Baiko says he'll be right there and even tells her to call the police, prompting Wook Seo-won to rush to him and confess. However, when Yoyo heard him talking about the police, she thought he might be getting kidnapped and figured it was finally time for her to save him for a change. Back at the theater, Wook Seo-won apologizes and explains she was just trying to get Lulu to keep dancing. Baiko says that's the most dumbass reason he's ever heard, but Wook Seo-won insists that the Lulu was going to quit dancing because of him. Apparently, Lulu was always looking forward to spending time with her brother. Even when Wook Seo-won confessed to Lulu, her reason for rejection was a picture of Baiko. Bai Qiao is shocked by that last part, but Wu Xiuwen asks if he's okay with Lulu giving up her dance dreams. Later, Bai Qiao and Lulu head home together while Lulu holds up an umbrella. Bai Qiao asks if she really wants to give up dancing and warns that she might regret it, but Lulu doesn't know what he's talking about. Lulu insists that she will never give up until she surpasses that woman and becomes the pride of her brother. That's when Bai Qiao remembers she who shall not be named. Now that 2 years have passed, he no longer feels the same about her leaving, but he'll never forget the pain he felt. That's why he can't accept confessions anymore. Lulu asks if Bai Qiao is about to cry over female Voldemort again, so Bai Qiao claims he was only thinking of what they'd have for dinner. Bai Qiao says Lulu should have a better reason for dancing, so Lulu reminds him of the story of the life that hangs in the balance. Suddenly, Bai Qiao remembers what he taught her years ago. Back then, he was watching his favorite episode of Ultraman, when Lulu asked him to play with her. That's when he told her the story of a life hanging in the balance. Of course, it was all to get her to go to dance class so he could watch Ultraman, but he didn't expect she would really cling to those words as motivation for her dance. In the end, Bai Qiao forgot how she started dancing in the first place, so Lulu accused him of not treating her right as a sister. Suddenly, they heard the sound of a car approaching, so when it splashed some water at them, Lulu tried to use the umbrella to protect them. But Bai Qiao turned his back and sacrificed himself. When they returned home, Bai Qiao helped her dry off, telling her not to do too much, even with the dance thing. Lulu says she just wants to take care of her brother, which is what she discussed with Wu Xiuwen, but Bai Qiao assures her that's his job. He then tells her she can't give up dancing as she still has other teams to beat. Lulu is worried that the White Witch is rubbing off on Bai Qiao, but he assures her there's nothing wrong with overtaking people. Lulu sees some water on Bai Qiao and offers to dry it for him, but when he tries to refuse, she jumps on him and starts to tickle. Suddenly, Bai Qiao remembers his meeting with Ning Yi. He immediately rushed to the coffee store where Ning Yi calmly asked if he had resolved all his issues. When Bai Qiao asked how she knew, she showed him the desperate text from Yoyo, who apparently had been worried sick, so Ming Ya had promised to handle it. Bai Qiao realizes that he has to solve his problems once and for all, or they'll only get worse. He sits with Ning Yu and brings up the matter of pretending to be lovers, so she asks him what he chooses. The next morning, Yoyo waits for Bai Qiao again, shocking Bai Qiao with her level of desperation. Yoyo claimed it was just a coincidence and began asking what he did with Ning Yi last night. Bai Qiao knows this is the perfect time to tell her what he agreed with Ning Yi, but he's interrupted when Yoyo suddenly turns around and starts taking something out of her bag. Suddenly, she pulls out a pair of handcuffs, thinking he'd be into that kind of stuff. When Bai Qiao asks where she learned all this, she holds out her favorite book, which has the book version of. She realizes she forgot something and turns around, so Bai Qiao uses the opportunity to run for it. At that moment, Ning Yi walks down the hall and notices Yoyo bugging Bai Qiao again. Bai Qiao manages to escape, but his phone rings and yet another nuisance is on the line. Tong Xin asks how his weekend went and Bai Qiao says it was fun, but deep down he blames her for making Lulu punish him with food after. Tong Xin asks him if he'll accompany her to a tennis club later, but Bai Qiao conveniently seems to run out of service and ends the call at that point. Tong Xin calls her trusted minion, Shen Wei, and tasks her to find out where Bai Qiao will be taking his next class. Meanwhile, Bai Qiao is getting tired of getting passed around like a sweaty basketball when yet another girl reaches for his hand. This time, it's Ning Yi who asks why Yoyo is still chasing after him. She suggests that since they reached a deal last night, they might as well get all the misunderstandings out of the way. She moves closer to him, and at that exact moment, Tong Xin walks up behind them and drops all the papers she was holding. Yoyo also comes running up excitedly until she sees her man in the arms of another. The girls can't believe their eyes as Ning Yi tells Bai Qiao to lower his head so she can get all the dust out. Yoyo is the first to crack as she runs off crying. Tong Xin tries to talk to Bai Qiao, but when she starts fumbling over her words, she gives up and runs out too. Ning Yi says she heard Yoyo's cries of doom and asks if he's okay with it, so Bai Qiao says it's for the best since he couldn't bring himself to tell her. Ning Yi suggests they head to the literature club to discuss when suddenly, a boy calls out to Ning Yi, hoping to talk to her about the literature club too. Bai Qiao was about to excuse himself when he notices Ning Yi's eyes begging him to play his role. He gets the message and tells the guy they don't need to talk in private if it's about the club. The boy immediately asks what his business is, so Ningye reminds him that he's the vice president and also her boyfriend. The boy's reality shatters as he sinks into a musical rendition of Celine Dion's All By Myself. Ningyi apologizes for springing that up on him, but Bai Kao says it's better if he spreads the news. When he asks if that was the simp she's troubled to refuse, Ningyi says there's someone else. She then suggests they up their game to make their relationship believable, and tells him to join the literature club. After Bai Kao agrees, she then brings up some advice from TikTok that says couples like to leave their mark on each other. Before Bai Kao can think too much, Ningyi grabs his neck and pulls him close enough to leave a lip print on his neck. Ningyi says she has some things to take care of, but suggests they start going to school together from tomorrow, which Bai Kao agrees to. Later, Bai Kao realizes Tong Xin would probably hang him by the balls when she finds out he joined the literature club. He then wonders how he manages to keep getting dragged from one problem to another. Suddenly, his next problem shows up in the form of Yoyo, who says she has something important to ask him. Some moments later, Bai Kao buys them some ice cream while Yoyo waits for him. She'll eat it to soften the blow, so he hopes she's not a diet, but thankfully she grabs the extra calories without hesitation. Shen then asks when his thing with Ningya happened, so Bai Kao says it was just yesterday. Yoyo asks why he isn't afraid that she'll tell Ningyi she's dating him, so Bai Kao says Ningyi is pretty understanding, which shuts Yoyo right up. She asks if he really likes Ningyi, and he reminds her that he told her from the beginning. Yoyo insists that she's way out of his league, but Bai Kao says Ningye thinks he's a trustworthy person. Yoyo tries to tell him that's what she thought of him the first time they met, but she changes the topic. When she realizes the next person he'll be sharing ice cream with is Ningyi, tears start streaming down her face. She then says she always wants to be the one sitting next to him. As the wind blows, one of her ribbons comes off, so she asks him to help her tie it again. As Bai Kao fixes it back, he realizes he won't be able to do this for her anymore. Yoyo asks if that's the last time he'll help her, and when he says it probably is, she starts bawling and saying she doesn't have anyone else to grab ice cream with. The waterworks flow in full force as she regrets ever starting to like him. Bai Kao feels bad, but he knows it would be better not to say anything so she can let out all her emotions. He holds her one last time as their non-existent relationship comes to an end. Later, Bai Kao returns home to Lulu, who offers him some ice cream she got for them to share. But Bai Kao says he just wants to rest. As he rests, Lulu comes to check on him with her usual excess energy. Bai Kao asks what she's doing there, so she offers to do anything he wants to make him feel better. Bai Kao is touched by how much she cares and agrees to let her help. Meanwhile, Ning Yai sends texts asking about their meetup the next day. The next morning, Bai Kao walks to school feeling like people are staring lasers at him. Suddenly, two of them call his attention and ask if he is shamelessly stalking Ningyi. Surprisingly, Bai Kao keeps it cool and points out the gum sticker on one of their arms that could be caught during school inspection, and also brings up their upcoming test that requires the paper they're holding. The boys immediately apologize for messing around and ask if the rumors of him and Ningyi are true. Just then, Ningyi walks up and apologizes for being late. Bai Kao smoothly heads to meet her and assures her it's fine, while the Ningyi fan club reps cry over losing their goddess. Ningyi asks if the boys are bothering him, but Bai Kao covers for them and says they were actually helping. Bai Kao hands him a lemon tea. She made herself causing more background crying noises, as the simp's chance at love sinks into oblivion. Bai Kao offers to carry her bag, and though Ningyi tries to talk him out of it, Bai Kao insists it's the normal boyfriend thing to do. Unfortunately, the bank sinks faster than the Titanic, making him wonder why she needs so many back-breaking textbooks. Bai Kao says literature kids probably bench textbooks instead of dumbbells, so Ningyi explains that literature is about the portrayal of life. She runs her fingers up and down his body as she continues to give him a free lesson, then ends it with a knock on his dense head, cause she knows he didn't hear a word she said. She tries to make it simpler and asks if he loves Yoyo. He explains that though he's known her a long time and she's an interesting person, but she's only friend zone material. Ningyi says those feelings can be documented in a book as literature, but before they can continue, a girl overflowing with cursed energy shows up. It turns out to be Shen Wei, who scolds him for being on a date when the council meeting is almost over. She threatens to spill some of his blood, so Bai Kao starts running for his life as she chases him. However, Ningyi stops her by flicking some common sense back into her. At the council office, Tong Sin sulks on a table as she holds up the ribbon she made with Bad Kyo's stolen button. Meanwhile, Shenhui marches a clueless Bad Kyo to the council office angrily. She asks if he told Tong Sin about his relationship with Ning Yi, so Bad Kyo says she walked in on them the other day. Shenhui figured he'd screwed up, so she advises him to apologize to Tong Sin and drags him off by the tie, making him wonder what he needs to apologize for. Shenhui intends to fix their equally non-existent relationship, so she shoves Bai Kyo into the room with Tong Sin and locks the door, promising to let them starve to death unless they make up. Tong Sin quickly tucks the ribbon in her pocket so he doesn't see it, and then the two stare awkwardly at each other. Tong Sin tries to break the ice, but Bai Kyo interrupts when he points to the mountain of paperwork she's been ignoring. Tong Sin starts going on about the difference between fish and Bai Kyo, and when he wonders what the heck she's talking about, she suddenly says that she likes him. Bai Kyo has no idea how to respond till he casually brushes it off, thinking she's just playing tricks on him again. Tong Sin takes the opportunity to weasel out and says since Bai Kyo likes seafood, she just claims to like fish, so he'd like her more. Tong Sin starts to tease him about thinking something else when Shenhui interrupts to call. Tong Sin nervously tries to get her to back off, but Shenhui insists that his cluelessness is getting painful. Tong Sin says it's too late to tell him the truth, so Shenhui offers to tell him herself. Tong Sin refuses and pushes her out, so they sit and wonder what she can do next. Shenhui comes up with a devious plan to steal Bai Kyo's back and whispers it into Tong Sin's ears. Some moments later, Tong Sin walks in confidently, ready to resume their work. Bai Kyo asks if there's something she wants to talk to him about, but Shenhui butts in and says it's a girl's secret. She then tries to leave for the swimming club when Bai Kyo asks if the girls are planning to bomb the school. Tong Sin smacks the foolishness out of him and orders him back to work. Their task is to sort through the club's verifications before the principal blows their heads off. Tong Sin wonders why Shenhui let the paperwork get this much, but when Bai Kyo reminds her that was actually her job, she suggests they work on it together. They start approving budgets for the different clubs till they arrive at the literature club, and Tong Sin gets a wicked idea. She comes up with some cowshit reason and says the club has to be disbanded, but Bai Kyo stops her before she can sign it off, reminding her to treat all clubs fairly and equally. He then hands her the calculator to check while he approves, so Tong Sin calls him strict. Tong Sin says they need the help of such a strict vice president, and Bai Kyo immediately gets a bad feeling when she asks for them to meet on Saturday. Later, Bai Kyo goes shopping with Lulu, who tries to get him in some pink swim trunks, but he insists that he has a pair already. Lulu says they might have disappeared, so Bai Kyo wonders how and checks his bag. Suddenly, he grabs Ning Yi's lemon tea and realizes he can't let Lulu find out, so he shoves it back and says he really does need a new swimsuit. Lulu can tell he's hiding something and insists on knowing what's in the bag, so Bai Kyo claims there's some octopus mutant bug in the bag to scare her off. Lulu doesn't buy it for a second and insists on checking when Bai Kyo suddenly realizes something and asks how she knew his swimming trunks were gone. Lulu initially gets nervous till she flashes a demon smile and plans to scream it out loud. The reason his trunks disappeared is that last week she wanted to go out in a skirt, but she couldn't find any safety pants when she happened to find his trunks. Before she can detail the rest of the inappropriate story, Bai Kyo shuts her up and agrees to buy another one. He then asks if she'd like to pick one herself, though she thinks he must want her to dress down for him. Bai Kyo smacks her head before she gives anyone the wrong idea, but this only makes her think he must be thinking cultured thoughts of her. Lulu grabs 2 swimsuits and starts wondering how much she's willing to spend. Bai Kyo remembers that Lulu started saving money years ago, so she can definitely afford it. He asks her how much she's saved, but she says it's not enough for what she wants to buy. Though Bai Kyo is super curious to know what it is, he decides it's best she keeps it a secret. Even if she's secretly a degenerate, she's at least a cute one. Bai Kyo offers to buy the swimsuit for her so she doesn't waste her money when he suddenly realizes Lulu might look just a little too cute in that swimsuit. If some Dan Schneider creep saw her in this, he might offer her a show on Nickelodeon, so he hands her a onesie to buy instead. Lulu thinks he's being stingy and leaves to try it on when a girl from their school walks up to ask if he's Bai Kyo. She tosses a bag at him and explains that Yoyo hasn't shown up to school for 2 days, and since he's the only one who knows where she lives, he's got to deliver her class notes. Lulu returns to show off her onesie when she notices Bai Kyo with a bag and starts to chase him, demanding to know which brother snatcher is after him this time. After escaping his demon sister, Baekhyeo arrives at Yoeo's house, wondering what to say. He tries to practice his opening line, but they all make him sound like a waste man talking out of his. While he panics, Yoeo's mom walks up behind him. Once inside, Baekhyeo awkwardly sits with a cup of tea while Auntie Chang asks him if he knows anything about her daughter getting rejected. Baekhyeo sweats rivers as he claims to know nothing about it, so Auntie Chang more or less threatens him to stay for dinner. She then heads to the kitchen while Baekhyeo wonders what he just agreed to. Just then Yoeo returns from the store, surprised to see Baekhyeo. She immediately runs to her mom and informs her that she's seeing a hallucination of Baekhyeo on the couch. Her mom plays along and confirms that the doctor did say she dropped a few brain cells recently, but she suggests taking her hallucination up to her room to play. Yoeo bravely approaches him and calls him an illusion. Baekhyeo is already used to her crackhead ways and informs her of the notes her classmates wrote for her. Yoeo is impressed by how spot on the illusion is, and Baekhyeo starts wondering if this is schizophrenia at work. When he tries to hand her the notes, she refuses to touch them so the illusion won't disappear. Unfortunately, her plan goes south when she slips on a confused duck toy and lands right on his lap. Baekhyeo tries not to while Yoeo gets comfortable, refusing to open her eyes and see that he's gone. By the time she opens them, Baekhyeu's soul has almost completed its ascent to heaven. The blockhead finally realizes Baekhyeo is the real deal, but even the earth refuses to open up and swallow this hot mess. Yoeo immediately runs upstairs blaming her mom for not telling her the truth, so Auntie Chang tells Baekhyeo that since he's the one who broke her, he's got to fix it. Baekhyeo wonders why he's got to do it, so she threatens to keep him prisoner, making Baekhyeo think she might be related to Tong Sin in some way. Baekhyeo finds himself back at square one as he knocks on her door, asking for her. Yoeo is getting changed and tells him Yoeo might come down if he waits in the living room. Suddenly, Baekhyeo notices a red liquid seeping under the door and thinks Yoeo might be trying to unalive herself, so he busts inside to stop her. It turns out that she's just in her underwear, so she covers herself with her piggy jacket and insists Yoeo isn't in the room. Baekhyeo asks how Yoeo's doing, so she explains that she had a fever, but the doctor says she'll be allowed to return to school the next day. Baekhyeo tells her she got juice spilled at the entrance, so Yoeo freaks out and checks on her cupcakes, relieved they're still okay. She rushes back to offer Baekhyeo some, and when she tries some, she excitedly asks how it tastes. Baekhyeo says it's delicious and wonders why he's never tasted it at her mom's store, so Yoeo proudly says she's the master chef behind it. Baekhyeo reminds her that she said she's not Yoeo, so Yoeo turns back and insists that she's not, but Baekhyeo tells her to stop playing such childish games. Suddenly, Yoeo starts singing a song about a person in love waiting by the sea, saying Yoeo wanted her to deliver it to him. When Yoeo continues her depressing song, Baekhyeo apologizes for making her sad, but Yoeo says he doesn't need to be sorry. She then asks how things are with his new girlfriend, so Baekhyeo says they're okay. Yoeo informs him that if he was her boyfriend, she'd never let him visit another girl alone. Baekhyeo timidly says he was asked to come, so he had no choice. While Baekhyeo is flustered, Yoeo thinks it's the best time to get changed. Baekhyeo tries to tell her something, but when he sees her shaking so much, he assumes she must be crying. He tells her they need to talk face to face and pulls the jacket off her only to find her midway to being bare-plotted, so she tries to end his life for peeking twice. Later, Baekhyeo walks home relieved that the awkwardness has been diffused. Unfortunately, he also agreed to work at Auntie Chang's store on weekends, unable to say no after everything he's done. Suddenly, he finds Ning Yi petting a cute cat who must have lived a cultured past life. Baekhyeo asks why she's not home yet, so she explains she has to return her books to the library. Suddenly, the cat jumps toward Baekhyeo, pulling Ning Yi onto his chest. Baekhyeo freaks out, so the cat rears its mischievous head, and he pulls out of its happy place and scolds it for getting a feel before him. Shinwei secretly watches them as Ning Yi tells Baekhyeo to go home. She then reports to Tong Tad that they're acting too formally to be lovers. The cat walks up to her, and she praises it for doing a good job as apparently the furball is an honorary member of the council. The next morning, Baekhyeo remembers how Lulu had left that morning for a sleepover, warning him not to have any girls over while she's gone. Now that Baekhyeu's the only one at home, he whips out a can of cola and other diabetes influencers and celebrates being a free man. Sadly, he spoke too soon as the doorbell rings. He assumes Lulu must have forgotten something, but when he opens up, he finds Tong Sin waiting. Bai Kyo tries to close the door and correct his mistake, but Tong Sin asks if he forgot about the important task they had that day. Bai Kyo slaps his head from frustration and tells her she can't come in on Lulu's orders. While they fight it out, the neighbor calls out and congratulates Bai Kyo on scoring a fully packaged girlfriend.
Nice.
Bai Kyo says she's just one of the friend zone inmates, but the neighbor advises him to hit that, saying she won't tell his parents. Bai Kyo quickly shoves her in the house before things get any weirder while Tong Sin tries to fake her innocence. Tong Sin accuses Bai Kyo of not appreciating her efforts to come early, and he can bring cookies. Then she puts one in her mouth and asks if he wants one. Bai Kyo figures this is another one of her tricks to get him to pose for an ugly picture. But when Tong Sin gets closer, he wonders if she's actually serious. The idiot opens that thirsty mouth of his to get some, but Tong Sin pushes him back and says the cookie is no longer available. She then tries a magic trick and says she'll pull it from behind the ear, but Bai Kyo thinks she means hers and leans forward till he accidentally kisses her. They immediately separate, both red in the face, so Bai Kyo apologizes for misunderstanding her. He then says he'll get changed, so they can leave, but Tong Sin gets mad and pulls him back. She accuses him of trying to kiss and dip, and calls him a heartless scumbag. Later, they go shopping for a file cabinet and Bai Kyo wonders why she couldn't have ordered online, but Tong Sin insists it was better to go in person. Suddenly, she notices Bai Kyo standing in front of a glowing orb getting into character. He announces himself as the Lord of the Moon and starts reciting other mumbo-jumbo, while Tong Sin records premium blackmail material. She asks him what his powers are, and the idiot keeps going on about drinking blood when he turns around and sees Tong Sin's camera. He realizes she recorded it all, so he throws himself before her and begs her to delete the evidence. Bai Kyo suggests another magic trick, but before she can finish, she remembers that disaster from earlier on. Instead, she shoves the phone between her pleasure hills and tells him to delete it by himself. Bai Kyo makes the smart choice and changes the topic to the cabinets they came all the way to buy. Tong Sin sits on top of one, giving him a view of heaven above. Bai Kyo nervously turns away, realizing she likes to sit in strange places. He looks at the price tag and says the council would go bankrupt, but Tong Sin suggests they use the literature club's funding to buy it. Bai Kyo wonders what she has against the club, but Tong Sin ignores him and goes to talk to the manager. In the end, they didn't take the literature club's money, but they did go bankrupt. While they were at the office, Bai Kyo hesitated to tell her something on his mind. It might affect their friendship, but if he doesn't say it, he'll be very uncomfortable. Bai Kyo calls her attention but struggles to speak up, making Tong Sin nervous. She wonders if he finally realizes how she feels, so she turns red and tells him to go ahead. Unfortunately, when Bai Kyo asks for the GT6 he was promised, Tong Sin feels cold water washing her high expectations away. Angered, Tong Sin asks him to repeat himself, and the idiot also does it, causing her to awaken her Jinchuriki and overflow with the Nine Tails chakra. Bai Kyo tries to beg for his life and says she could go to jail for murder, so Tong Sin pulls out her phone to threaten him with a fate worse than death. As Bai Kyo's own foolish words ring from her cell phone, he realizes his social life is in danger. He begs her to erase the video, saying his life is already full of problems. Tong Sin says he has to give her a gift since they went out, so Bai Kyo pulls out a white fox plushie and asks if it'll do. He says they're both white with red eyes, but when he gets to the personality, Tong Sin flashes the phone at him, so he says the white symbolizes her pure heart and spirit. Last of all, the fox is cute like her. Tong Sin tries to prove difficult, but she finally accepts the plushie while Bai Kyo thanks Shen Wei for the extra lessons on how to win Tong Sin over. Next, the pair head out for snacks, and while they eat, Tong Sin reminds him of the first time they met and asks him who the bouquet he gave her was originally for. Bai Kyo looks sad and tells her he can't talk about it, so Tong Sin apologizes for asking. On the same note, Bai Kyo asks if it's okay to ask a similar question, so Tong Sin says he'll have to pay a consulting fee. When Bai Kyo says he didn't ask for any fee, she tells him it's his loss and he'll have to buy her a drink. Bai Kyo reminds her of the day they first met. It was raining when Bai Kyo saw her standing at the bus stop without an umbrella or an intention to move. Bai Kyo gave her the umbrella and offered to take her to her house, which touched Tong Sin, who was already in tears. Tongxin says she doesn't want to talk about it either and requests for her drink, so Bai Qiao admits defeat and hands it to her. Tongxin offers him a chance to win back the drink, and Bai Qiao wonders what evil plan she has up her sleeve this time. She asks if he rejected someone last week, making Bai Qiao wonder how the hell she knows about it. Bai Qiao says he never did such a thing and tells her she lost, so she takes a gulp of the drink and tells him he can have the rest. Bai Qiao knows the White Witch is doing this on purpose, but she tells him it's late and she has to head home. She then leaves him with the bottle, unsure what to do. The next morning, Bai Qiao wakes up hungry and realizes he can't survive long without Lulu. He hears a knock at the door and thinks Lulu might have returned to save him, but it's actually Yoyo back to being a nuisance. Bai Qiao refuses to believe the witch standing in front of him isn't Lulu, with a bad makeover, so Yoyo reminds him they're supposed to start working together that day. Yoyo says she brought over some delicious cakes and asks for his sister, so Bai Qiao decides he can't lose to a woman 2 days in a row. He says his parents are also around and she can't wait to greet them, which shocks Yoyo, who thought they were at work. Bai Qiao says they return for the holiday, so Yoyo says she'll rather wait downstairs since she's not emotionally prepared. Bai Qiao grabs her empty head and starts calling out for his parents, making Yoyo cry till he reveals it was all a joke and no one's home. Yoyo calls him mean for tricking her, then bites his arm as payback. Later in Auntie Cheng's store, Yoyo puts the finishing touches on Bai Qiao's outfit for the day. Bai Qiao tells her to stop biting his right hand, cause he uses it for special purposes, so Yoyo says she'll put her mouth somewhere else next time. Suddenly, the store manager, Miss Lee, appears and asks who he is. Yoyo says he's their new part-time worker because he owes her mom. Miss Lee teases them for wearing matching couples' outfits, but Yoyo frustratedly says they're just friends. Bai Qiao remembers the same thing happening with his neighbor yesterday and decides to play dumb, but Miss Lee promises not to tell Auntie Cheng of their secret work romance. She then shoves them to the bakery kitchen and says the stuff on the desk was specially arranged by Auntie Cheng. When she leaves them alone, Yoyo says Miss Lee thinks they're a good match, but Bai Qiao insists it was all a misunderstanding. Bai Qiao walks off, ready to get to work, when Yoyo notices a piping bag. She gets a wicked idea and goes to join Bai Qiao to discover what her mom left behind for them. They both stare down the box, speechless. Yoyo starts teasing Bai Qiao for looking so shocked and claims she was just playing along. In the box is a cake and instructions to help decorate it as an apology cake. Yoyo threatens that if he doesn't do it, his job will be over, and insists that it's really not targeted at anyone. Bai Qiao agrees and they get to work, so Yoyo asks if it's his first time making a cake. While he answers, Yoyo makes a plan to shove her cream in his face and take an embarrassing picture of him. She then goes behind him and tries to get him in the right position while she holds the cream behind her. Bai Qiao is nervous about how close she is, but when Yoyo sees her moment, she lifts her hand and slaps him in the face. Bai Qiao wonders what he did to deserve this, while Yoyo wonders where the cream went. When she looks back, she slips on it and starts to fall, so she grabs Bai Qiao for support. At that moment, Miss Lee decides to check on them, but her eyes are violated by the sight of Yoyo trying to give Bai Qiao's backshots. Miss Lee apologizes for interrupting and disappears before they clear the misunderstanding. Yoyo starts to cry and blames Bai Qiao, then asks if he's going to comfort her. When he says there's no need, Yoyo grabs the piping bag for her second sneak attack, but unfortunately, the idiot didn't cut the tip and it ends up exploding on her. Bai Qiao suddenly points out the smoking oven and asks if that's normal, so Yoyo kicks him out and tells him to leave it to her. Bai Qiao acts concerned till he wonders what kind of crackhead summer job this is. Suddenly, a customer calls out to him and asks if he's new. After explaining the situation, she asks him to stay for a chat, saying he reminds her of her last boyfriend. Bai Qiao can tell this isn't going to end well, and sure enough, the woman offers to pay him more than the store just to stay with her after work. Bai Qiao can't believe his ears when Yoyo comes up behind him and asks what's going on. She tells him Miss Lee is asking for him and pushes him to leave quickly. When the customer asks who she is, Yoyo covers his mouth and says he's her boyfriend. The customer suddenly runs off, so Yoyo scolds Bai Qiao for being an idiot and almost selling himself to the streets. She then offers to give him money if he's that desperate, but Bai Qiao says that he's really not. Auntie Cheng walks in as they begin to argue over the matter. She's happy to see they're getting along nicely and asks if they want to have dinner together as her treat. On the way, Auntie Cheng asks how the cake making went, so Yoyo interrupts and says it went well, adding that Bai Kao should be their new billboard since he attracts rich women customers. Auntie Cheng suddenly asks if Yoyo's tired from staying up all night. Yoyo tries to deny it, but her mom remembers her wondering what to wear the next day. Yoyo claims it was just a line from a movie, so her mom mentions how she planned to have her mom drop her at his house and make up a dumb excuse for being there. At this point, Yoyo threatens to jump out of the car if her mom keeps exposing her, but it doesn't work. Later, Auntie Cheng tells them to decide what to eat while she finds a parking space. Then she signals Yoyo to go for it and drives off. Moments later, she texts Yoyo that she couldn't find any space and she'll be heading home. When Baekyo tries to ask what's up, Yoyo hides it from him and changes the subject. She asks why he's barely been checking his phone. Baekyo says he doesn't play games that require checking in and Lulu was fine last time he checked, so there's no reason to. That's when Yoyo wonders what kind of backward relationship he has with Ningyi that they don't communicate. Later on, Yoyo places an order at a restaurant while Baekyo checks in with Lulu. The waitress notices the cake box and offers to arrange their special package. Lulu starts promising him all the food she'll cook for him when she returns so he'll stay away from all those bad women. Suddenly, Wook-Doyewon hijacks the phone and starts running her mouth, so Baekyo gladly ends the call and returns to his awkward not date. As they eat, Baekyo calls Yoyo a picky eater, so Yoyo insists there's nothing wrong with that since she's been growing up regardless. Unfortunately, her copium loses effect when she sees the high difference between them and threatens to chew Baekyo out. Suddenly, the waitress returns with a camera and a birthday celebration package. Baekyo tries to correct the misunderstanding, so Yoyo kicks his foot and says that the cake is actually for another special event. She asks for them to help slice it and does a cake reveal. Confetti goes flying everywhere as Yoyo celebrates knowing each other for 947 days. Baekyo can't believe Yoyo has kept track of every day since they met, but he smiles as he thinks she's really a cute idiot. Afterward, the pair enjoy some ice cream as Yoyo looks at their photos together. Baekyo asks if today's ice cream tastes better than their last one, so Yoyo agrees till she realizes what happened the last time they had ice cream. She hopes he's not about to plunge another knife into her heart, but Baekyo shyly says he just wants to know what she likes about him. Yoyo says his question is like a book owner refusing to sell you his book, but still asking you to compliment his work. However, she agrees to tell him if he answers something in return, so she asks if he and Ningnai have no feelings for each other. For Yoyo, liking someone is very difficult to describe. It's like a scale that moves toward a good feeling the more you get to know someone. It balances when you're just normal friends, but when the scale tips unexpectedly, the friendship now becomes another type of liking. For her, love is the accumulation of daily routines. From noticing someone to learning their shoe size, to knowing the awkward smile they make when they bump into someone. That's why she knows Baekyo and Ningyi aren't in love. Baekyo tries to deny it, so Yoyo explains that she was never sad that he rejected her, but she was sad because she thought they couldn't be friends anymore. She confessed because if it went well, she could have won big, and if not, at least she still had her friend. Baekyo points out his girlfriend, but Yoyo says she might be an idiot, but she's no fool. She asks if it's really possible to fall in love 2 days after she confessed, and even points out their non-existent communication. Baekyo insists that they're dating regardless, so Yoyo warns him not to blame her if they're both found out as phonies. She then clears the air and says she's not sad to be rejected by him, but she's afraid that he'll hate her. Baekyo assures her he doesn't hate, so Yoyo says that's good enough for her and walks off. He then laments how she saw through the act when he gets a phone call. It turns out to be Lulu who invites him over. Later, Baekyo sits with Lulu at the pool as she live streams to her audience. Wook-Doyewon immediately rushes over to show she's also around, but Lulu warns her she's ruining the live stream. When Baekyo asks why Lulu is doing this, she reveals that she saw a sibling pair doing the same thing last week and decided to try it to feel better. Wook-Doyewon asks why she's trying to feel better, so Lulu reveals that she received another unexpected confession. Baekyo immediately shoots Wook-Doyewon a cold look, but she insists she wasn't the one that confessed. Lulu says she rejected the loser and Baekyo is glad it runs in the family. Suddenly, Lulu asks him if has anyone he likes, so Baekyo nervously asks why she would say that. Lulu explains that he's been acting strange and coming home late, but Baekyo blames it on the student council. Wook-Doyewon calls him to the side and tells him she's been worried about his health. When Baekyo asks why that is, she says Lulu had been coming late to school and disappearing once it ends, so she thought Lulu was taking care of him. That's why she needs Bai Kyo to be healthy so she can stick to Lulu like glue. Bai Kyo wonders what's going on with Lulu when he suddenly notices Yoyo delivering a cake. When she notices him, she excitedly jumps to hug him, but he keeps her stink breath at arm's length. Yoyo starts inspecting his body for any strange marks and sees that his trunks aren't Ningyi's type, which means she's not there. Bai Kyo hears his sister looking for him and realizes she can't see him with Yoyo. He immediately drags Yoyo off to hide in the sauna room where their bodies stick close together, causing Yoyo to complain about the heat. However, they can't leave as Wu Xiaoyuan is right outside looking for them. Meanwhile, Tang Xin is busy pumping iron when she sees a notification of Lulu's live stream with her brother, which gives her an idea. Bai Kyo texts Lulu to return to the pool as he only went to the bathroom, so the girls head back. Unfortunately, Yoyo already fainted from the heat, so Bai Kyo tries to get until he realizes what this looks like. He carries out and dumps her on a random bench, then escapes into the pool. Suddenly, he receives a note inviting him to the spa, and it turns out to be Tang Xin. Thankfully, Lulu hasn't spotted her arch-nemesis, so Bai Kyo tries to slip away. Lulu asks where he's going, so he says he needs to take a piss again and runs off. He asks Tang Xin what she's doing there, but she says she just wants to say hello. Bai Kyo tries to leave, but Tang Xin pulls him back and says her towel will fall off if he doesn't help her pinch it. Bai Kyo tells her to ask the receptionist for a clip and starts to leave. So Tang Xin drops the towel, making Bai Kyo turn back. Thankfully, she's just in a lace bathing suit, which is almost as bad, so Bai Kyo covers her up so no one sees her. Suddenly, he hears the demon sister activate her witch hunt sensors, so Bai Kyo freaks out, wondering what to do. Tang Xin tries to call out to Lulu, so Bai Kyo grabs her, jumps into the pool, and covers her mouth while Lulu stares at them with death in her eyes. At the same time, Yoyo wakes up and laments getting abandoned while her tantrum alerts Ningyi, who's sitting nearby. As Lulu looks into the pool, Bai Kyo and Tang Xin hide below a towel. Tang Xin starts to get naughty and wraps her legs around him. Then she swims past him, showing him angles he's never seen on land. Suddenly, Tang Xin realizes she's out of oxygen and decides to borrow some of Bai Kyo's. However, before she can suck the air out of him, Ningyi grabs him out of the water. She asks Tang Xin what she's doing there, and Tang Xin gets flustered till she remembers she's a worthy contender. She says she's showing Bai Kyo around her family's spa and tries to take him away, but Ningyi drags him back and asks if he's not her boyfriend. Ningyi insists she'd like to talk to Bai Kyo privately, so Tang Xin happily agrees and tells him to meet her at their usual spot. But in reality, Tang Xin is mad as hell. Suddenly, she notices a moving bush and wonders if that's the girl that Shen Wei said confessed to Bai Kyo. She then decides to follow the idea of spying on Bai Kyo secretly. Meanwhile, Ningyi informs Bai Kyo that she got rid of Lulu, that she asks where she can get design magazines on coated paper. Bai Kyo offers to take her to one of the university shops, but Ningyi says the prices weren't affordable. Bai Kyo notices Yoyo spying and asks what she's doing there, so Yoyo says she's watching them. Bai Kyo tells Ningyi they should change seats, but as he stands up, Yoyo grabs his foot. At the same time, Tang Xin returns to offer Bai Kyo a drink when she sees him diving headfirst for Ningyi's pebbles. Bai Kyo wonders why his problems are appearing at the same time when he sees he's heading to a satisfying conclusion. Unfortunately, Tang Xin stops him from reaching heaven by pulling back his trunks. Bai Kyo screams for the girls to let go while Lulu walks up and witnesses the chaos unfold. She calls out for her brother, and everyone turns to face her while Bai Kyo's soul flees his body. Then his lifeless body knocks all three girls right into the pool. Chapter 34. Some days later, Bai Kyo thinks it's strange that since the spa incident, Lulu has been very sweet and gentle. Bai Kyo asks her if she's been taken over by a parasite, so Lulu says that she's happy he isn't a friendless loser. Bai Kyo asks if she really isn't mad, so Lulu tells him to head to school while she waits for Wu Xiaoyuan. On his way, Bai Kyo remembers Wu Xiaoyuan lamenting about not going to school with Lulu, which means something's up. Suddenly, he spots Ningyi waiting for him in a kimono. When he asks what's with the outfit, she says she's modeling for the Chinese costume club later. Bai Kyo says he almost thought she was a princess, so Ningyi teases him for calling her noble, but when he gets flustered, she says she was just acting her fake girlfriend role. Bai Kyo leads them to the print store, when Ningyi stops him from getting flattened by Truck-kun. The force causes him to get too close to Ningyi, which sends them pulling back faster than your future hairline. Later, Ningyi talks to the store owner who tells her he can't reduce the price. Since it exceeds her budget, she leaves the store disappointed. Bai Qiao offers to try, but Ningyi thinks it's a waste of time, so he slicks his hair back and tells her to let him cook. When he enters the store, the man calls the same price for him, so Bai Qiao hits him with some genius-level math to get some percentage off, assuring him that it will pay him since he'll be getting regular orders every month. The store owner tries to fight back, but he gets overwhelmed by Bai Qiao's ramblings. Ningyi watches from behind and is impressed by Bai Qiao's haggling skills when someone calls out to her from behind. It turns out to be her senior, Xiaokan, who is very touchy-feely. As Bai Qiao sees them, another girl named Seokyu walks up and tells him Xiaokan likes to sniff people like a dog. Both girls were literature club members who pressured Ningyi into becoming president. Suddenly, Xiaokan goes running toward Bai Qiao to sniff his cheeks, but Ningyi holds her back with her leash. Xiaokyu asks to speak with Bai Qiao privately and says it's quite rare that Ningyi would ask someone for help. She then asks what he thinks of Ningyi, so Bai Qiao goes into monologue mode just to think up an answer, and all he comes up with is that she's a very nice person. When Xiaokyu asks what else, he says she's like a fairy. Xiaokyu says she might seem quite cold on the outside, but when he gets to know her, he'll see it's just a facade. She then tells him to ask for help if he needs it, and leaves Ningyi to him. Later, Ningyi asks him how things are with Yoeo, so he thanks her for helping him out the other day. Ningyi suddenly asks what it feels like to be in love, so Bai Qiao thinks that such a literary girl question, unlike the two other fools in his life. Bai Qiao likens it to a type of empathy that can be shown through emotions and expressions. She then takes it literally and tries to make a charming smile, which cues the romantic music and love bubbles. Then she apologizes for failing to make a cute face. While they discuss their plans for the next day, Lulu is nearby watching them and makes a call to her mom. Some hours later, Bai Qiao gets a call from his mom asking him to attend to an urgent matter. Meanwhile, Ningyi attends her photo shoot while Lulu continues to stalk her angrily. Later, Bai Qiao turns heads down the street as everyone wonders what the hell that smell is. Bai Qiao's urgent mission was to pick up durians from his uncle's house. It was apparently Lulu's idea to share some with her relatives, so Bai Qiao decides to call Lulu about it. When she picks up, he asks her where she is, so she claims she's in the vegetable market and asks what he wants to eat. Bai Qiao wonders how she could have gotten there so fast and starts asking more questions, so Lulu makes up an excuse and hangs up. Bai Qiao figures that the background noise wasn't a vegetable market. He then remembers what Wu Xiaoyuan told him about Lulu and guesses Lulu is hiding something from him. From the background noise, he deduces that she must be in a desert shop, and since she got their mom to send him far away, he knows just where she'll be. Later, he finds Lulu sitting with Ningyi and almost has a heart attack. Meanwhile, Lulu asks Ningyi to leave her brother. When Ningyi asks why, Lulu says Bai Qiao doesn't like anyone, including her, so it must mean that Ningyi probably has some dirt on him, so she begs Ningyi to leave him alone. Bai Qiao sweats rivers as he watches the confrontation play out. When Ningyi refuses to respond, Lulu slides her card and offers her 100,000 yuan to leave her brother quickly. Before Ningyi can respond, Bai Qiao steps out to talk to her. However, when she sees him, she runs for it without looking back, so Ningyi immediately grabs his hand and tells him to go after her. Moments later, Bai Qiao is racing down the street, regretting that he didn't tell Lulu about his fake relationship. When she had asked if he liked anyone, she clearly already knew about Ningyi. He finally figures out where she would have gone and finds her on a swing set. Lulu tries to run again, but Bai Qiao warns her that he'll ignore her if she does. She reluctantly returns to the swing and asks how he found her. Before he can say much, she hands him a bread bun to eat. After taking a bit, he tries to continue, but she stuffs a drink in his mouth too. Next, she hands him an apple, but this time, she tells him not to hate her. Bai Qiao says he can never forgive her, so Lulu starts crying. She was prepared for this outcome ever since she started stalking him every morning. When she found out who Ningyi was, she planned to pay her to leave, but she still didn't want Bai Qiao to hate her. Bai Qiao says he can never forgive her for trying to eat durian without his permission. When he insists watermelons are much better, Lulu tells him they were talking about something. Bai Qiao finally clears the air and says he and Ningyi are just friends. He finally told her the truth about the fake relationship which originated from Yoeo's confession. Lulu had asked how long the fake ship would last, so Bai Qiao avoided answering, knowing Yoyo was nowhere near giving up. Now that they've cleared things up, Lulu gives him a big hug, and they finally go home. Bai Qiao goes back to his normal school life when Dumb and Dumber appear and say something bad is happening. The boys tell him he has to make a life-threatening choice. He has to choose who he prefers between Tong Xin and Yoyo. Later, Bai Qiao gets called to a teacher's office where Yoyo and Tong Xin are waiting. The teacher says Bai Qiao's class needs to be split between Yoyo and Tong Xin's classes for their next project and asks what he thinks. Bai Qiao is relieved it's nothing like those idiots made it seem until he realizes he's choosing which side to suffer on. Tong Xin already looks like she's plotted something evil as usual, but even Yoyo looks like she's up to no good. Bai Qiao suggests he discusses with the other students first, but Tong Xin interrupts and says splitting the two classes is probably a bad idea as some will feel left out. The teacher agrees with her point and asks if they have any good ideas. Unsurprisingly, Tong Xin had an idea ready to go. In the end, all three classes were randomly grouped into two. Before they start, the teacher tells them to team up in groups of 3. Immediately, the boys start begging to get grouped with either Yoyo or Tong Xin. Simp and Simper try to dump their tasks on Bai Qiao so they can join in the auction for the girls, but Bai Qiao refuses to let them go. The boys say he can't relate since he has a girlfriend, but Bai Qiao insists they be teammates instead. Just then, Tong Xin walks up and asks if they've already formed a group of 3. The boys immediately deny Bai Qiao, so Tong Xin asks if she can join Bai Qiao's group. Yoyo also walks up and asks to join his group, sending one of the boys to an early grave. When the teacher sees everyone has formed a group except those 5, she asks the boys if they can cook. The Simp brothers immediately turn to Michelin chefs, while Bai Qiao assures her he won't burn the school down. Because of this, she pairs the 2 master chefs together and leaves Bai Qiao in a group with the girls. Yoyo happily runs to get the ingredients while Tong Xin pretends she didn't set this up. But worst of all, the Virgin ambassadors promise to watch Bai Qiao's every move. While the girls get to work, one of the boys asks what Tong Xin is like. Bai Qiao would like to be honest and say she eats children for breakfast, but when Tong Xin displays her proficiency in night twirling, Bai Qiao assures the boys she's beautiful and gentle. The other simp asks what Yoyo's like, and Bai Qiao wonders what to say about the person he rejected. Yoyo also grabs a knife, making Bai Qiao wonder if he's safe, but before he can answer, Tong Xin interrupts. She teases him to come back to work, and the simp twins start salivating. Tong Xin starts pouring a drink with Bai Qiao's name, so Yoyo asks what it is. Tong Xin explains that it's a new flavor developed by Bai Qiao's dad, and she planned to use it on her chicken, but now there's not much left. As Tong Xin watches Yoyo, she wonders if she's the one Shen Wei was referring to and plans to find out. She offers Yoyo a drink, so Yoyo puts her mouth on the cup too. The girls realize how weird this looks when Bai Qiao calls out to them. They immediately separate and scold him for not doing his work, making Bai Qiao realize they're both mad. Yoyo asks Tong Xin what Bai Qiao is like in the student council, but when Tong Xin wonders why she's asking, Yoyo says it's nothing. Tong Xin teases Bai Qiao by grabbing his cheeks, then she calls him lazy, but he's pretty average most of the time. Bai Qiao worries about the girl bonding and tries to put the focus on the food. Tong Xin says Bai Qiao is quite popular with the ladies, even though he's in a relationship with Ning Ni. She then asks what Yoyo's opinion on the matter is, so Yoyo says it's fine if they like each other. However, Tong Xin asks that if Bai Qiao is already a taken man, doesn't it make sense for the other girls to move on with their lives? On the other hand, Bai Qiao grew concerned about what was taking the girls so long to finish cooking and wondered what they might be yapping about. Meanwhile, Yoyo responded to Tong Xin's question by explaining that relationships were complicated, and their success depended on the feelings of those involved. Upon hearing her explanation, Tang Xin felt her words made sense. Yoyo then posed a question, asking if it wasn't wrong for Bai Qiao, as a student council member, to date publicly at school and whether there should be a rule prohibiting such behavior. Hearing the dumb question, Tang Xin wondered if Yoyo had inhaled too much spice while cooking, which had affected her dense brain because her question seemed ridiculous. She informed the salt-brained Yoyo that the former president and vice president of the student council had once dated, so it wasn't a big deal. Just then, the instructor ordered them to hurry up with the cooking and informed them that they needed to take a picture of their dish and send it to the teacher for grading. Yo-Yo and Tang Xin tried taking a picture of Bai Qiu's food, but he snapped at them, insisting they take a picture of their own dishes instead. Yo-Yo then brought out her culinary disaster, which she had humorously named after Bai Qiu, and attempted to tease him by putting it in her mouth. However, she immediately spit it out because it was too hot and spicy. Determined to involve Bai Qiu, Yo-Yo handed him the food and asked him to feed her. Bai Qiu pointed out that with so many boys in the class, it would be awkward, but Yo-Yo insisted. She opened her big mouth wide like a venomous cobra, ready to devour his meat. After waiting for a century and almost turning a mummy, she still hadn't been fed, so she opened her eyes, only to find Bai Qiu stuffing the food into his face hole instead. Furious, she pounced on him, ready to gouge his eyes out, but Bai Qiu quickly put his finger in her mouth, which surprisingly calmed her down. At that moment, Tang Kongshu, Yo-Yo's friend, walked into the classroom and playfully grabbed Yo-Yo's cheeks. Tang Kongshu insisted on talking to Bai Qiu, whom she called her Prince Charming, but Yo-Yo quickly pushed her out of the class, not wanting any interference. Shortly afterward, Tang Xin finally showed up with her own dish, proudly presenting it to Bai Qiu. When Bai Qiu saw the dish, his stomach almost developed legs to escape the torture. Sensing his disgust, Tang Xin explained that the dish was made from dragon eggs, adding yet another reason for Bai Qiu's stomach to flee. She attempted to feed him the cannibal concoction, but Bai Qiu knew that it would be his last meal on Earth if he had a taste of it, so he resisted with all his might. Not one to give up easily, Tang Xin adopted a new strategy and tried to force feed him with her mouth. Bai Qiu, now in a state of panic, screamed for help, begging her to leave him alone. Just then, Ningye arrived and peered through the classroom window, silently observing the chaotic scene unfolding inside. As Ninying looked around, she noticed that Bai Qiu and Tang Xin were just going about their normal activities. Meanwhile, Tang Xin continued her conversation with Bai Qiu, asking him when he first met Yo-Yo. He responded that it was a few years ago. Then she asked when he met his girlfriend, Ninying, and he replied, just 2 weeks ago. Hearing his reply, Tang Xin wondered how he and Ninying hit it off so fast, so she decided to go faster and harder. She began subtly seducing Bai Qiu, so the dude activated simp mode and accidentally cut his finger while slicing onions. Tang Xin immediately took hold of his injured finger and gently cleaned the blood. Following this, she asked Bai Qiu if he would come to her house on Saturday, and after hearing the question out of the blue, Bai Qiu's heartbeat was 200 miles per hour. To calm him down, Tang Xin playfully stuck his wounded finger into her mouth, but this only made matters worse as Bai Qiu nearly sweated out 90% of his body fluid and turned pale. With no other option, he nervously agreed to her invitation. Later that evening, Bai Qiu arrived home, exhausted from the cooking class. As he entered his room, he was stunned to find Lulu dressed in a cat outfit, and he wondered what the heck was going on. Lulu immediately grabbed him by the tie and tackled him to the ground, sitting on top of him. She demanded to know if he had done anything inappropriate with Ninying. He quickly denied it, explaining that they were just a fake couple and that nothing serious was happening between them. Unconvinced by his disgusting cappings, Lulu pointed out that Bai Qiu had made food for Ninying, something he wouldn't do if their relationship were just a facade. She added that only she had the special privilege of enjoying his long sticky meat and no one else. Bai Qiu hurriedly explained that it was part of a class session in the liberal arts class, and that was why he had to buy ingredients. To appease Her Majesty, Bai Qiu promised to cook something nice for her, which made Lulu excited. A few minutes later, as Bai Qiu was preparing Lulu's meal, he received a message from Ninying saying that she wanted to talk to Tang Xin, which shocked him. The next day at school, Bai Qiu hurriedly rushed into Ninying's class and demanded to know why she wanted to talk with Tang Xin. Seeing him in such a hurry, Ninying invited Bai Qiu to sit close to her, but as he approached, his proximity sensor wristband, which Lulu had placed on him, began alerting him to stick to the 6-foot rule as if it were 2020 again. Startled, he quickly covered it with his hand to shut it off. Ninying then explained that since she asked him to join the literature club, she was concerned the student council, led by Tang Xin, wouldn't let him off easily to join another club, so she intended to talk with Tang Xin about it. Later that day, in the school gym, Bai Qiu linked up with Tang Xin to get some relationship advice about dealing with Ninying. Tang Xin promised to help but informed Bai Qiu they would need another person's help, as it wasn't a one-person job. So Bai Qiu approached Xiaokun for assistance. Upon seeing him, Xiaokun grabbed his cheek and agreed to help. Tang Xin then suggested they play volleyball while discussing Bai Qiu's personal problems. As they played volleyball, Tang Xin gave Bai Qiu a crash course on Relationship 101 and asked if he knew about Nin Ying's parents' professions. Bai Qiu responded, saying he heard her father was a diplomat and her mother a famous writer, more renowned than Stephen King. Tang Xin explained that because of her parents' tight work schedules and constant traveling, Nin Ying never had a permanent residence in the country and changed schools faster than a fatso devours a Snickers bar. Due to her parents' nomadic lifestyle, Nin Ying grew up an introvert with few friends and limited human interaction, which explained her usual cold nature. Just then, Tiakan jump-served her soft volleyball toward Bai Qiu, who didn't see it coming. The ball smacked the doofus on the head, causing him to crash to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Watching this, Tang Xin wondered how someone could be so incapable and worthless, but she brushed the thought aside. The hit on the head prompted an epiphany, and Bai Qiu, who didn't understand the lesson he was taught, eventually got all Tang Xin was trying to tell him. He realized that due to Nin Ying's awkward behavior when faced with emotional problems, she avoided people with fake relationships. Tang Xin then asked Bai Qiu if he thought Nin Ying was a lovable person. Bai Qiu thought long and hard, and the only thing the blockhead could come up with was that she had a level 1000 Kia. After the conversation with the girls, even though Xiaochan was utterly useless and didn't give any meaningful advice and just played volleyball all through, Bai Qiu felt surprisingly good because he finally understood why Nin Ying had such difficulty talking to people and often chose to talk to herself instead, like a mental patient. So he bid the relationship advisors goodbye and left. As he walked home, he was overwhelmed with thoughts about how he would deal with Nin Ying and get along with her better. The next day at the school cafeteria, Bai Qiu headed to the vending machine to grab a zero cola because he had watched a video on Instagram advising him to lose a few pounds. As he approached the machine, he suddenly encountered Tang Xin, who snatched the cola from him and asked why he was taking her zero cola, as everyone in the school knew she was the only fitness junkie around. She threatened to make him pay for taking the last zero cola in the vending machine, but Bai Qiu grabbed her hand to retrieve the drink, which made the scene awkward as they stood staring at each other like weirdos. In a blink of an eye, Bai Qiu unleashed his ultimate alpha male energy. With all the confidence in the world, he pinned Tang Xin to the wall, causing the drink to fall to the ground and spill its contents all over Tang Xin's thigh. The situation became even weirder as Tang Xin gave Bai Qiu a cold glance, thinking the creep might be halfway to clapping her. Realizing how terrible the situation had become, Bai Qiu tried apologizing, but she slapped him to a stall and demanded he not say a word. While they stood in the middle of the cafeteria like two moronic hitmen, searching for their targets, Yao approached them and suggested they'd eat together at a table like normal humans for once. As they ate, Bai Qiu wasn't at ease. He could feel the tension rising, with both ladies sitting so close to him, and wished Mother Earth could swallow him. Just then, to excuse herself from such an unpleasant position, Tang Xin informed them that they had a student council meeting to attend. Meanwhile, a lot of steamy activity was going on under the table. Yao intertwined her legs with Bai Qiu's and questioned him about why he didn't wait for her at noon like she had instructed him to in a text message. Bai Qiu explained that he didn't receive any messages on his phone, but she didn't believe him and called him a filthy liar. Before they could conclude their discussion, they were startled by the presence of Nin Ying, who asked to join them at the table. A few minutes later, they were joined by Tangerine, who was also a member of the student council and Tang Xin's assistant. After a moment of awkward silence, Tang Xin finally broke the ice and asked for the expense list for the club. Hearing her question, Tangerine wondered why the dumbhead was asking for such a useless list at this crucial moment. However, Tangerine responded and informed her that the budget for the year was terrible and funds were decreasing at an alarming rate. Tang Xin then mentioned that the school's funds were being wasted by some clubs, who were using the school's money to support unwanted relationships, hinting at Bai Qiu and Nin Ying. At that moment, Bai Qiu began to sweat as if he just had an intense workout, so Nin Ying, in a bold move, put her meat in his mouth, which stunned everyone. Seeing Nin Ying's audacious gesture, Yao felt like the girl was indirectly asking for trouble, so she had a spiteful thought. She stood up and stuck her own meat into Bai Qiu's face hole. Nin Ying pondered what Yao had just done, and even though she wasn't cool with the ridiculous behavior, she decided she had to deal with the pink-haired Barbie Wanade, since she was a friend of Bai Qiu's. So Ming Mi joined the conversation and asked Yo Yao if she was a picky eater. Yo Yao was both shocked and furious at the question. She thought the disgusting emo was just trying to provoke her, so she decided to be the bigger person. She responded and told Nin Yang that she was a picky eater because that's the best way she knew how to thrive. Yo Yo then stood up and whispered into Bai Ko's ear, asking if he had ever seen a balloon filled with air before. After asking that question, Yo Yo walked away from them. Nin Yang, curious about what Yo Yo had whispered to Bai Ko, asked him what the pinky had said. Bai Ko told her that at first he didn't understand a thing, so he had to drop his IQ to make sense of the nonsense. He explained that the inflated balloon Yo was talking about was herself because she was angry. Meanwhile, Tang Xin, who was still focused on the issue of the school's financial shortage, suggested that the student council update the school rules and break up every relationship to save the school budget. Hearing this, Bai Kyo was enraged and yelled at her to stop being a female grumpy in Snow White and to give love a chance. Shortly afterward, Nin Ying asked Tang Xin if Bai Kyo would be allowed to join the literature club, since he also secretly wanted to join. At that moment, Tang Xin had a million thoughts racing through her mind. She wondered why Nin Ying had decided to ask her now. So she cleverly turned the tables and asked Bai Kyo directly if he wanted to join the club. Bai Kyo, on the other hand, was shocked by how quickly the tension had shifted to him. Meanwhile, Tang Xin and Tangerine silently hoped he wouldn't choose to join the literature club and gave him cold stares as if to say that if he dared to agree, he'd be signing up for the Devil's Literature Club in hell. Tangerine then leaned over and whispered in Bai Kyo's ear, threatening that if he tried leaving the student council for any useless club, he would be shut down permanently. Faced with these threats and icy glares, Bai Kyo had no choice but to tell the witches that he would make sure to finish his duties with the student council before heading to the literature club. However, Tang Xin wasn't satisfied with Bai Kyo's compromise and decided to devise another plan to keep him from going to the literature club and to push Nin Ying away. She informed Nin Ying that the student council had received a commission from the city tourism authority, which was a heavy workload, so she needed all the help she could get for the tourism job. Realizing she couldn't outplay these devious girls at their own game, Nin Ying apologized for her request and excused herself. Seeing her plan had worked, the conniving Tang Xin threw herself at Bai Kyo, apologizing for ignoring his feelings and pretending to put the student council's duties above his happiness. All to look good, though deep down she didn't give two about Bai Kyo's feelings in the slightest. Later that day, the trio visited the city tourism office, and while on their way, Tang Xin reminded Bai Kyo of his promise to visit her house the next day. Bai Kyo tried to back out, but Tangerine shot him a menacing glance and ordered him to go. Shortly afterward, Tang Xin left, leaving Bai Kyo and Tangerine alone. Then Tangerine asked Bai Kyo if he had actually prepared anything for his visit to the president's house, referring to Tang Xin. The clueless donkey responded that he didn't know he had to prepare anything before going to Tang Xin's house. Trying not to look like a complete idiot, Bai Kyo added that he would pick up eggs and milk on his way there tomorrow. Tangerine stared at him, her eyes practically glowing red with disbelief, thinking she never thought she'd meet the most stupid man alive. She contemplated knocking some sense into his empty head, but instead decided to explain that Tang Xin didn't give a about eggs and milk. She wasn't running a farm after all. Tangerine then gave him a crash course on how to raise up a woman, something most of the losers watching this video probably needed. The following day, Bai Kyo decided to put Tangerine's advice into action, even though he couldn't understand why he had to go through all this effort just to discuss student council activities. He bought himself a tuxedo, slicked his hair back with baby oil, picked up a nice bouquet of flowers, and made his way to Tang Xin's home like Prince Charming. On getting there, he gave her the flowers, and just as he was about to feel relaxed and settled, he heard the sound of a horn that made him wonder if she had invited other guests for a harem. Stepping outside, he saw a girl on a bike who asked if he was Tang Xin's boo. He quickly denied it, explaining he was just a schoolmate. Curious, he asked who she was, and she took off her helmet to reveal her okay face. The helmet girl explained she was a creditor there to collect a debt that Tang Xin's mom owed her. She went on to say that she had lent money to Tang Xin's mom when her company was about to go bankrupt. Hearing all this, Bai Kyo never believed Tang Xin was a broke who was actually forming class at school with her witcher's hair. The flat girl then revealed that since Tang Xin's mom couldn't repay the debt, she was there to take Tang Xin and sell her off for some cash. Bai Kyo thought this had to be some sort of prank, But before he could fully process what was happening, the helmet girl started walking towards the house. Bai Qiao immediately grabbed her by the shoulders and accused her of being a useless thief, looking for an excuse to break in. Before he could finish his sentence, she grabbed him by his tie and suplexed him to the ground like a WWE superstar. She warned him to stay out of other people's business, and then started laughing hysterically, like a deranged clown. She introduced herself as Tang Lin, and then revealed it was all a prank and Tang Xin was actually her cousin, which stunned Bai Qiao. Just then, Tang Xin emerged and put a sharp knife to Tang Lin's throat, and revealed to Bai Qiao that the girl was a mad alien who just escaped Area 51. Tang Lin then mentioned that since Tang Xin did show up for the family dinner, she suspected Tang Xin was up to something freaky, so she came to the house to confirm her curiosity. Shortly afterward, the unwanted guest decided to flirt with Bai Qiao a little, so she started taking off her clothes, and on noticing the sneaky attack, Tang Xin hurried towards Bai Qiao to cover his cultured eyes. Tang Xin asked Tang Lin what she was trying to gain from her disgusting behavior, and Tang Lin responded by telling her she just wanted to swim. That moment, Tang Xin dragged her out like a piece of worthless trash to the changing room and instructed Bai Qiao to close the curtains. While inside the changing room, the two ladies were ready to let it all out. Inside the changing room, Tang Lin suggested they go for a swim, but Tang Xin flatly refused, telling her to go swim alone in the afterlife. Tang Lin smirked and teased her cousin, suggesting that Tang Xin didn't want to swim because she was flatter than the latest iPhone, and didn't want her crush, hinting at Bai Qiao to see her in a swimsuit. Annoyed, Tang Xin yelled at her to shut her filthy mouth and declared she wouldn't fall for Tang Lin's childish tricks. Tang Lin then asked if Tang Xin had a crush on Bai Qiao, which Tang Xin immediately denied. Seeing an opportunity to provoke her, Tang Lin decided to go talk to Bai Qiao herself. Hearing this, Tang Xin quickly blocked the exit, determined to keep her cousin from causing any more trouble. Sensing her cousin's desperation, Tang Lin devised an evil plan, one only the devil himself could think of. Somehow she managed to snatch Tang Xin's plot armor, effectively leaving her defenseless and unable to leave the changing room. Stunned, Tang Xin wondered how the evil girl had managed to take her floodgate label without her knowing. She then demanded her plot armor back, but Tang Lin taunted her, saying she wouldn't be able to come out without it. Realizing she was trapped, Tang Xin could only watch helplessly as Tang Lin walked out of the room, leaving her behind. Tang Lin approached Bai Qiao, who was seated on the couch, and asked him to accompany her for a swim since the weather was so hot. The disgusting simp agreed, and soon the two of them headed to the water slide, enjoying themselves as if there was no tomorrow. During their time together, Tang Lin showed Bai Qiao some childhood photos of Tang Xin, and he couldn't help but think that even as a kid, Tang Xin had been pretty. Tang Lin then started to tell him a story about a girl who met her first love for the first time, but Bai Qiao wasn't interested in her story. Suddenly, Tang Xin, who had managed to find a swimsuit, appeared at the top of the water slide, her face red with fury. She loudly demanded to know why Tang Lin had taken her man for a swim when she had just met him. After that dramatic entrance, Tang Xin slid down the water slide to meet them. Realizing she was toast, Tang Lin explained that she had orchestrated the whole situation to teach her cousin a lesson about love and life. Tang Lin then began to share her own story about the first time she fell in love. She recounted meeting her first love in high school, despite having never imagined she'd fall for any guy there, considering all the boys in school were all a bunch of losers. Unexpectedly, she found herself attracted to a literal fat cow who somehow swept her off her feet, but she was too afraid to confess her feelings. Instead, she spent her time checking his homework and teasing him in class, masking her feelings behind playful antics. Tang Xin, now leaning in closer, tried to cut her cousin off, telling her to stop dwelling on the past. However, Tang Lin ignored her and continued with her story. She revealed that as time passed and they graduated, she never had the courage to express her true feelings, sealing them away in her heart. The last time she saw the dude she loved, he was with someone else, leaving her heartbroken and desperate. After sharing her tale of unrequited love, Tang Lin hoped Tang Xin would learn something from her own Cinderella story, one without a happy ending. With that, she bid them both goodbye and left. With Tang Lin gone, Bai Qiao and Tang Xin finally got back to focusing on the student council work. However, after a while of slacking off and doing little meaningful work, Tang Xin suddenly expressed a desire to taste Bai Qiao's cooking. She begged him to cook for her, but Bai Qiao flatly refused, citing his mentor, Andrew Tate, had warned him against cooking for women. Undeterred, Tang Xin did the stupid puppy face thingy, thinking it would actually work its magic, but Bro stood his ground and doubled down on his stance not to sin. Sensing Bai Qiu's reluctance to cook, Tang Xin came up with a plan. She suggested they place a bet on a game, proposing that if she won, he would have to cook dinner. Bai Qiu, confident in his abilities, agreed to the bet. They decided on a game of tic-tac-toe, and in the first round, which lasted less than 2 seconds, Bai Qiu lost like a complete dumbass. After playing 30 rounds of intense tic-tac-toe, Bai Qiu lost every single one, as if he were cursed by the Kardashians. Tang Xin, delighted by her winning streak, listed the penalties for his defeat: cooking dinner, washing her socks, making her bed, and even becoming her pet. Unwilling to concede defeat so easily, Bai Qiu insisted on one last round. This time, Tang Xin raised the stakes, proposing that if he lost, he would have to do anything she wanted all semester long. But if he won, she would cancel all his debts. The allure of having his debts wiped clean was too tantalizing for Bai Qiu to pass up, so he agreed. They played a very calculated and tense match, but once again, Bai Qiu lost. Determined not to back down, he suggested one final game with an even higher stake. If he lost this time, he would do anything Tang Xin wanted for his entire university life, without any retaliation. This bold bet shocked Tang Xin, and at that moment, she had a lot of nasty thoughts playing in her head. She thought of all the questionable things she could do, so she agreed. As the crucial match began, Bai Qiu's main character powers suddenly kicked in, and much to his surprise, he accidentally won the game. Overjoyed, he swore to himself never to gamble again. But just as he was basking in his unexpected victory, Tang Xin begged for one more round, promising to give him a lap dance with no plot armor if he agreed. The proposition stunned Bai Qiu, causing his brain to stall for a moment as he considered the offer. After pondering for a while, Bai Qiu ultimately declined Tang Xin's offer. He refused to simp like a hormonal teenager, standing firm in his resolve and making his role model, Andrew Tate, proud. He told Tang Xin that betting was a sin, but she continued to beg like a desperate maniac. Seeing his determination, Tang Xin grew frustrated, resenting him for being such a straightforward protagonist. Later on, Bai Qiu decided to leave Tang Xin's house, uncertain of what her cultured mind might think of next. As he wandered aimlessly around town, he suddenly remembered he had forgotten all about work. Just then, he spotted an old bookstore and decided to check it out. Upon entering, he saw a familiar plot and realized it was Yao Yao. He wondered why the he was seeing another nutcase, so he asked the girl with the Barbied poop hair what she was doing in an old bookstore, and she revealed that she was learning how to take advantage of weak men. Yao Yao then asked if she could touch Bai Qiu's chest, which made him wonder if she had truly lost it. She explained that she wanted to check his heart rate, because she had read that the faster the heartbeat, the shorter the lifespan of an organism. Amused by her odd reasoning, Bai Qiu agreed, and as she placed her hand over his chest, Yao Yao was shocked to discover that his heart was beating at over 500 beats per minute. Alarmed, she pointed out that he could die at any moment from too much cultured thought. Bai Qiu then demanded to see the author of the book she was reading. Upon checking, he found a familiar name, Yan Luo. Yao Yao asked if he knew the author, and Bai Qiu revealed that they both attended the same high school. This revelation made Yao Yao feel salty, wishing she had known Bai Qiu back then. Bai Qiu, too, wondered if their lives would have been different if they had known each other in high school. The following morning, Bai Qiu received a call from Tang Xin instructing him to come to school immediately, stating it was a matter of urgency. Bai Qiu swiftly rushed to school like a player on a mission in Call of Duty. Upon arriving, he opened the classroom door and suddenly found himself face to face with his entire harem, nearly causing him to have a seizure. He immediately began to wonder why all three of his love interests were in the room simultaneously, which made him anxious about the situation. Just then, Lingu appeared, and Bai Qiu wondered what this 90s cartoon character was doing there. Lingu explained that because the student council had failed to provide a satisfactory draft for the tourism administration, and due to their school's friendly relationship with the tourism office, he had decided to act as the event's counselor to help them complete their job. However, his true intention was to take revenge for the humiliation he had suffered earlier. Tang Xin cringed at the sight of the annoying pest, but decided to go along with it. She informed Lingu that she would love to have a chat with him, and they scheduled a meeting for that afternoon to discuss the proposal draft. Seizing the opportunity, Tang Xin began to flirt with Lin Gu, who thought he had the ultimate steez, with all the girls from the neighboring schools swooning over his rise. Feeling overconfident, he decided to settle some old grudges. Lin Gu then approached Yo Yao, attempting to be friendly. He quickly switched to monologue mode, asking her if she would like her picture to be featured in the tourism magazine. Meanwhile, Bai Qiao, watching the scene unfold, felt it was time to put an end to the nonsense. He stood up as if he had something meaningful to contribute, but ended up being a complete by suggesting they use some of the student council funds for lunch at a restaurant, which left everyone stunned. Lin Gu was irritated by Bai Qiao's words and stood up, calling him a useless, disgusting piece of trash. The two beta males soon went at each other, exchanging words and trying to assert dominance. Bai Qiao then challenged Lin Gu, telling him to make a decision himself and stop delegating responsibilities as if he were their boss. Lin Gu, surprisingly taking Bai Qiao's words to heart, asked him to step up and propose a solution. Bai Qiao announced that he had discussed a solution to the problem with Yao Yao the previous night. This revelation caught Tang Xin off guard, and she immediately started a jealous scene. She demanded to know what had transpired the night before, creating a dramatic moment fueled by her insecurity. As the tension escalated, Tang Xin and Nin Yang were eager to learn about the outrageous event that had transpired between Bai Qiao and Yao Yao the previous night. Sensing the gravity of the situation and realizing he had caused quite a commotion, Bai Qiao decided that the best way to diffuse the tension was to make a quick escape. He immediately grabbed his arch-enemy, Lin Gu, by the shoulder and began guiding him towards the door. As they walked, Bai Qiao started babbling nonsensically, as if they were lifelong friends who had known each other since birth. In an attempt to distract Lin Gu, Bai Qiao flattered him, pointing out that since he was chosen to oversee the tourism project, he must be highly talented, and handling the task alone should be a breeze for him. Lin Gu abruptly stopped and grabbed Bai Qiao by his shirt, refusing to take on the project alone. Sensing the altercation, Tang Xin, who was protective of her wannabe babe, lunged forward and delivered a swift, stunning kick to Lin Gu's gut. She demanded he follow Bai Qiao's instructions. As Lin Gu begrudgingly left, Tang Xin, still burning with curiosity, asked Bai Qiao for an explanation of what had happened the previous night. Realizing the harshness of her tone, she quickly softened her voice. Yao Yao stepped in to clarify the situation, explaining that she and Bai Qiao had met at an old library where they brainstormed the idea of conducting a school-wide survey for the tourism project. As the two girls discussed the matter, Tang Xin suddenly noticed Nin Yang making a subtle move on Bai Qiao by offering him lemon tea and asserting herself as his girlfriend. This sight made Tang Xin furious, and she almost lost her composure. However, instead of reacting impulsively, Tang Xin thought of a better strategy. Instead of finding a way to eliminate Nin Yang from the picture, she decided to use the one person who was a complete nutcase and utterly obsessed with Bai Qiao, his sister. She suggested they go to Bai Qiao's sister Lulu's school to conduct the survey, a suggestion that took Bai Qiao by surprise. Shortly afterward, they all headed to Lulu's school, with Bai Qiao realizing that the day was going to be long and challenging in more ways than one. When they arrived at Lulu's school, Tang Xin went to collect surveys from the sports club with her sidekick Tangerine, while Bai Qiao and Yao Yao waited for her to return. Suddenly, they realized that Ning Yin was missing. They wondered where the Chinese Harley Quinn had wandered off to. Yo Yo then confessed that she had seen Ning Yin heading toward the dance studio. Upon hearing this, Bai Qiao's face paled with the realization that this was where Lulu practiced ballet. Knowing that Ning Yin's presence could spark a chaotic confrontation, Bai Qiao and Yao Yao rushed to the dance studio to prevent the next World War IV. Meanwhile, in the dance studio, Ning Yin stood face to face with Lulu. They stared each other down, both silently assessing the situation. Lulu, confused and slightly irritated, wondered why the Wednesday Addams ripoff was in her space. She asked Ning Yin what she wanted. Ning Yin, without missing a beat, replied that she was there to talk about Bai Qiao. Lulu's face immediately soured at the mention of her brother. Trying to diffuse the tension, Ning Yin noticed a graduation yearbook lying on the floor. She picked it up and asked Lulu if she was missing someone. Lulu raised an eyebrow, wondering what the black monochrome was rambling on about. Ning Yin explained that people usually bring out yearbooks on graduation day, but seeing it here suggested Lulu was missing someone special. After a brief pause, Lulu admitted she was indeed missing a friend. In response, Ning Yin shared a heartfelt story about her own experiences. How, due to her unconventional lifestyle, she often found herself leaving schools and never truly forming lasting friendships. She felt like a side character in the stories of others, never the main focus. This unexpected vulnerability touched Lulu's usually cold heart. She hugged Ning Yin and assured her she wasn't a side character, just that she was flatter than a cutting board. While this was happening, Bai Qiao and Yao Yao watched from outside the studio window, their jaws dropping in amazement at the unexpected camaraderie unfolding before them. Just then, Tang Xin appeared out of nowhere and asked what they were doing peeking in like voyeurs. Her sudden appearance startled the duo, causing them to lose their balance and crash to the ground, pulling Tang Xin down with them. The loud noise from their fall alerted Lulu, who turned to see her brother and his harem sprawled awkwardly outside the studio. Cringing at the sight of Tang Xin and Yao Yao, Lulu demanded to know what they were doing at her school. As she moved toward the door for a confrontation, Ning Yin quickly grabbed Lulu's tutu, pulling her back and whispering something into her ear. As Bai Qiao, Tang Xin, and Yao Yao scrambled to free themselves from their awkward positions, Yao Yao accidentally grabbed Tang Xin's phone. Her eyes widened when she saw a picture of Bai Qiao as Tang Xin's phone wallpaper. The revelation of Tang Xin's secret crush left Yo-Yo momentarily stunned. Meanwhile, Ning Yin had whispered into Lulu's ear, encouraging her to save her brother from the thirsty predators, implying Yao Yao and Tang Xin. Lulu, taking the cue, walked over to Yao Yao. On the sidelines, Tangerine, who had been quietly observing the scene, was impressed by Ning Yin's cunning strategy to use Lulu to neutralize her rivals. It was clear Ning Yin was using Lulu as a tool to eliminate her competition. Following Ning Yin's advice, Lulu didn't bring up anything about relationships with Yao Yao. Instead, she played it cool and began talking about the cake Bai Qiao had brought home, which she learned was made by Yao Yao. She complimented Yao Yao on how delicious the cake was and expressed a desire to learn how to bake one like it. Noticing the evolving dynamics, Tangerine realized that if Lulu was forming a big sister relationship with Ning Yin and Yao Yao, then Tang Xin would likely be left out and could bear the brunt of the fallout. Sensing an opportunity to intervene and save her master from becoming the odd one out, Tangerine suggested they all go out for a drink to break up the high school reunion vibe that was developing. While the group headed out, Yao Yao and Tang Xin struck up a conversation about the picture of Bai Qiao on Tang Xin's phone wallpaper. Yao Yao remarked that it was obvious Tang Xin saw her as a rival. She added that she had thought their menstrual cycles had ceased when they shared a drink from the same cup, implying a sense of sisterhood, but now realized that with Tang Xin's apparent crush on Bai Qiao, they could never be true friends. As the two talked, Bai Qiao approached them and informed them he was heading home with Lulu. Just before he left, Tang Xin assigned him the task of organizing the survey data, which she expected to be ready by the next morning. A few hours later, while Bai Qiao was alone in the literature room, diligently organizing the surveys, he heard a knock at the classroom door. Surprised that someone would be at the school at such an odd hour, he walked over to check. When he opened the door, he was taken aback to find Ning Yin standing there, wearing a skirt shorter than a TikTok dance trend. Ning Yi approached Bai Qiao, offering him her popsicle and hinting that she wanted him to use his sickle for popping, insert pic of a sickle. However, Bai Qiao could see through her insincerity, so he gracefully declined, choosing to remain a V card holder. Ning Yi then questioned why Bai Qiao hadn't gone home despite the late hour. He explained that he needed to finish a draft that was due to be submitted to a client the next day. In response, she offered to help with the draft, but made a request in return. She asked him to accompany her to meet someone. Curious, Bai Qiao wondered who she wanted to see at such a late hour. Suddenly, the power went out, plunging the literature room into total darkness. Startled by the dark, Ning Yi grew frightened, prompting Bai Qiao to reassure her, saying it was his duty to protect her as her boyfriend. Grateful for his comforting words, she offered him some leftover food, and they shared a meal by candlelight. As they ate, Bai Qiao inquired again about the person Ning Mi wanted them to meet. However, she remained evasive, so Bai Qiao let the matter drop. Ning Mi then demanded to have a taste of his meat, so he offered her from his plate, but she told him she wanted a different kind of meat. Bai Qiao had no idea what kind of meat the creep was talking about, so he insisted she have the one he could offer. So she took a bite of his meat, and the beautiful taste of it gave her the hardest climax in her entire life. Throughout the night, they talked and kept each other company, And Bai Qiao realized that even though Ningyi looked like she was given birth to by a ghost, she was a child at heart. The following morning, Bai Qiao woke up to find Tang Xin standing uncomfortably close, practically breathing down his neck. Startled, he shifted, only to find their lips almost touching, which made him recoil in discomfort. Suddenly, Bai Qiao remembered the draft he had completed but forgot to save as a Word file. In a panic, he began searching for the hard copy, but it was nowhere to be found. As he recounted the events of the previous night to Tang Xin, she realized that he had actually spent the night with Ningyi at school. With a smirk, Tang Xin revealed she had just been teasing him. Ningyi had already typed up the draft, saved it as a Word file, and sent it to her. Tang Xin had even forwarded it to the client. She then shared some exciting news. After receiving the draft, the client had rewarded the team with 5 tickets for an overnight cruise. Tang Xin mentioned that she had already given 1 ticket to Ningyi and handed another to Bai Qiao, asking him to pass it on to Yo Yao. Meanwhile, Tang Xin was determined to resolve the lingering issues within their complicated love square involving her assistant's girlfriends. Later that afternoon, Bai Qiao headed to the school gym to find Yo Yao. When he found her, Yo Yao playfully asked if he was already tired of his girlfriend. However, Bai Qiao explained the cruise and handed her a ticket. Initially, Yo Yao thought the cruise was just for the 2 of them, but Bai Qiao quickly corrected her, explaining that the entire team was invited, which burst her bubble. At first, Yo Yao declined the invitation, but she reconsidered, adding a condition. She would only agree to come if Bai Qiao could beat her in a game of table tennis, so she then showed him the tennis ball. However, Bai Qiao wished they had played with bigger balls. Just then, they played an intense game of table tennis, but Bai Qiao was mid when it came to the game, and Yo Yao couldn't play much, so she was beaten to a pulp by Bai Qiao 12-1 in favor of Bai Qiao. After the game, Yo Yao gazed at Bai Qiao, questioning why he played so seriously, almost as if he was desperate for her to join the cruise. Her words struck a chord with Bai Qiao, who tried to brush it off with a laugh. Meanwhile, Tang Xin watched them from a distance, observing the interaction. Later that day after school, Bai Qiao headed to the restaurant where he was supposed to meet Ningyi. Together, they were to meet the mysterious person she had asked him to accompany her to see earlier. As he waited for Ningyi to arrive, he suddenly spotted Lulu, trying to stay incognito. Despite her disguise, Bai Qiao immediately recognized her familiar, ugly face and wondered what her psychotic self was doing there. Realizing she had been spotted, Lulu sent him a WhatsApp message, informing him that she would be closely monitoring his fake relationship with Ningyi. She then questioned why he was at the restaurant, accusing him of planning to cheat on Ningyi with another hoe, and reminding him that cheaters get the steak. Bai Qiao quickly clarified that he was waiting for Ningyi, his boo, and no one else. Just then, a random blonde girl sat down next to him and began asking weird questions about Ningyi and her boyfriend. Confused, Bai Qiao asked who she was, and she revealed herself as Shanshan, Ningyi's childhood friend and rival in love. Moments later, Ningyi arrived at the table and formally introduced Shanshan. A few minutes into the conversation, Shanshan noticed the strange vibe between Bai Qiao and Ningyi. She grew suspicious, questioning whether they were truly a couple or just faking it. She asked why they didn't use pet names like real couples and instead referred to each other by their real names. Ningyi dismissed the idea, saying that pet names were superficial and that a cheater would remain a cheater regardless of what they called each other. Despite this explanation, Shanshan wasn't convinced. To prove they were a genuine couple and not just pretending, Ningyi leaned into Bai Qiao, intertwined her legs with his, and kissed him. As they kissed, Lulu watched from a distance with evil intent, unleashing her feminine Darth Vader, and immediately stormed out of the restaurant. On the other hand, Shanshan had seen enough to be convinced that their relationship was real. Before leaving, she reminded Ningyi to inform her brother, Jishu, about her relationship status. Hearing the mention of Jishu, Bai Qiao asked Ningyi if her Jishu was the reason she needed this fake relationship. Just then, Ningyi decided to reveal the secret behind her relationship with Shanshan and Jishu to Bai Qiao. She explained that the 3 of them had been close friends since childhood. Even though she had changed schools, she always kept in touch with them because they were her favorite people. She then shared that after their college graduation, Shanshan confessed her feelings to Jishu. However, Jishu rejected Shanshan because he had deep feelings for Ningyi instead. Realizing that this situation was starting to strain their bond, Ningyi came up with the idea of getting a fake boyfriend, hoping it would allow Jishu and Shanshan to be together and restore their friendship to what it once was. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Tang Xin had been spying on Yo-Yo all day and finally trailed her to a lingerie store. Tang Xin thought this was the perfect opportunity to reconcile with Yo-Yo and team up to take down the main chick Ning Yi. At the same time, Yo-Yo, who was planning to use the boat cruise as a chance to seduce Bai Qiao, was busy searching for the perfect lingerie. Overwhelmed by the many options, Yo-Yo felt lost and frustrated, which prompted Tang Xin to approach her in the store. Tang Xin offered to be her designer and help her pick the right plot armor to buy. In response, Yo-Yo lifted her skirt to check what type of plot armor Tang Xin was wearing, to see if she was qualified to help. However, Yo-Yo immediately realized how absurd and creepy her action was, making her feel embarrassed. She began to sweat rivers and apologized for acting like a disgusting creep with zero IQ, explaining that she wasn't thinking clearly and had made a poor decision. Yo-Yo explained that she didn't apply the use of her brain at that moment and was just thinking through her change. Tang Xin told her it was fine and decided to take off her plot covering for her if that was what she wanted. Noticing she was stripping, Yo-Yo felt uneasy and thought the creep was actually thinking something else, so she yelled at her to stop because she wasn't interested in her naughty religion. That moment, Tang Xin decided to come clean with her, so she told Yo-Yo that even though their relationship was complicated, they have a common enemy, which was Ning Yi. So Tang Xin pleaded with her to join forces with her on the boat cruise to take down Ning Yi. On the day of the boat cruise, Lulu went to extreme lengths to prevent Bai Qiao from leaving the house, even going so far as to barricade the entire place with police tape. She was adamant that Bai Qiao wasn't going on the cruise with those desperate. Bai Qiao tried to explain to the heartless witch that it was just a simple boat cruise with coworkers for one night, and there wouldn't be any intense workout sessions involved. However, Lulu was horrified at the thought of him spending an entire night alone with the three nutjobs. She pointed out that being with those hungry vampires for a night would surely drain him of all his bodily fluids. To counter this, she unveiled her plan, pulling out stickers with the phrase "Get back in" to place above his magnum region, hoping to prevent any potential plot developments. But Bai Qiao, exasperated, shouted at her, calling her crazy and insisting she needed psychological help. As twilight approached, Bai Qiao set out for the dock to meet the ladies. When he arrived, he found the harem squad already waiting for him, all looking stunning as if they'd received a fashion makeover from Cinderella's fairy godmother. In contrast, he looked like a homeless brokey, the Prince Charming in rusty armor. Shortly afterward, they were joined by Tangerine, who couldn't help but wonder when Tang Xin and Yo-Yo had become such close friends. Once on board the ship, they sat down for dinner. Bai Qiao was puzzled as to why they were all served celery for dinner, and when he asked the waitress, she informed him it was based on a reservation. It was all part of Tang Xin's perfectly orchestrated plan to expose Ning Yi and Bai Qiao's relationship as a scam. Tang Xin explained that she had ordered celery because it was supposedly Bai Qiao's favorite dish, insisting that everyone have it for dinner. But Bai Qiao, who cringed at the sight of celery, quickly realized that this was a setup aimed at Ning Yi. He was not to speak up, but Yo-Yo quickly intervened, placing his enormous head under her bouncy stronghold and threatening to suffocate him if he dared say a word. Tang Xin continued, insisting that if Ning Yi truly knew her boyfriend, she should be aware of his favorite meal. This immediately put Ning Yi in an awkward position. Then, out of nowhere, Tangerine spoke up, saying that while she liked the meal, it seemed unfair to Bai Qiao, who clearly hated celery. Her comment left the girls stunned. Realizing that their plan had been thwarted by the nosy fruit girl, Tang Xin quickly shifted gears to avoid any further embarrassment. She casually informed Ning Yi that her mom had sent regards to her parents, to which Ning Yi dryly acknowledged, promising to pass the message along whenever her absent parents remembered they had a child and decided to come home. Though Ning Yi outwardly appeared clueless, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, especially since Tang Xin had suddenly teamed up with Yo-Yo. Meanwhile, under the dinner table, a subtle but intense game of leg communication was unfolding. Tang Xin was using her legs to signal Yo-Yo, urging her to join the conversation and find clever ways to undermine Ning Yi. After some thought, Yo-Yo asked Ning Yi if her parents were aware of her relationship with Bai Qiao. Tangerine, who was observing this secret legwork, was impressed by the connection between Tang Xin and Yo-Yo and thought they'd make a good offensive team like Batman and Robin. Ning Yi, responding to Yo-Yo's question, admitted that she hadn't told her parents about her relationship with Bai Qiao because they were too old-fashioned to understand 21st century trendy stuff. However, she mentioned that she planned to introduce Bai Kao to them soon. Seizing the moment, Ningyi suddenly declared that she and Bai Kao should head to bed as a couple, which left the side chicks in shock. However, Bai Kao was reluctant to go anywhere with the Magnum craving Amo, so he resisted. Noticing his resistance to follow her to bed, Ningyi grabbed his shirt and pulled while Yo-Yo pulled him backward by holding his disgusting pants. The two ladies soon started to drag the poor loser and nearly equally ripped his members symmetrically. Tong Sin, on the other hand, was tensed at seeing her crush lead to bed with another woman. So she tried yelling at the evil man-eater to bring back her soulmate, but Yao Yao held her mouth and became her spokesperson. Yao Yao then informed Ningyi that it was too early to go to bed and asked if they would like to party with them or play games in the lobby, but Ningyi couldn't care less as she carried Bai Qiao to the room. Few hours later, the master of Rizology, who slept on the couch and left the room for Ningyi, woke up to find the ugly Barbie on the couch with him. Yao Yao explained that she came to join him on the couch since her roommate, hinting at Tang Xin, was undressing in the room. Bai Qiao could smell her disgusting lies with his canopy nose that could also smell what the rock is cooking. At the same time, Tang Xin was executing a plan which was shared with her by Tangerine, and she somehow found her way into Ningyi and Bai Qiao's bedroom. She thought of inviting them for a game to prevent any meaningful plot between Bai Qiao and Ningyi from happening. Suddenly, Ningyi walked into the dimly lit room and sat down on the bed. At that moment, Tang Xin, who had been expecting Bai Qiao to enter the room, was petrified and immediately thought of escaping to hide in the bathroom. But as she stood up to leave, Ningyi, mistaking her for Bai Qiao, grabbed her hand and insisted she stay, suggesting they could sleep together, just like they had the previous night in class. Tang Xin quickly assessed the situation and decided to play along, pretending to be Bai Qiao. A few minutes later, the two girls, both clueless baddies with mushrooms for brains, lay side by side on the bed. Ningyi began to ramble about how Tang Xin had always been hostile toward her, but had now joined forces with Yao Yao, because they were good friends, hinting that Yao Yao was the main problem. She added that the only way to defeat Yao Yao for good was to attack her with sweet moments as a couple, which would deliver a crushing blow. After saying this, Ningyi made her move, climbing on top of Tang Xin, still believing she was with Bai Qiao. As she leaned in to exchange saliva, she suddenly noticed Tang Xin's platinum blonde hair and briefly wondered if she had somehow landed herself in Game of Thrones. But as she looked closer, she realized it wasn't the mother of dragons but the thirsty Tang Xin, which left her completely shocked. Ningyi quickly jumped off the bed, horrified by the realization that her private moment had been intruded upon. Before she could fully react, she heard awkward movement coming from the sitting room. Meanwhile, in the sitting room, Yao Yao relentlessly tried to create some massive plot development with Bai Qiao, who was determined not to simp. They struggled on the couch until they both ended up falling onto the floor. At that moment, Yao Yao tried taking off Bai Qiao's shirt and suddenly noticed the "Get That Back" and sticker placed slightly above Bai Qiao's magnum dangle area, leaving her completely stunned. She demanded to know why he had such a sticker on his body. Just as Bai Qiao, already mortified, tried to explain the bizarre situation, they were interrupted by Ningyi and Tang Xin, who entered the sitting room and found them in an extremely sus position. Right then, Yao Yao had a flashback to a similar situation in the school's men's restroom, when she ambushed Bai Qiao while she was on cleaning duty. They had both been inside the restroom when they suddenly heard the noise of some random losers outside, so they tried to stay silent and calm to avoid being caught in a compromising situation and labeled as two disgusting cultured weirdos. Realizing the boys outside were going to take their time having fun, touching their various millimeter Peters, Yao Yao decided to take full advantage of the moment to flirt with Bai Qiao. She provocatively placed her well-rounded bundle on top of his loins, and the gimp nearly gave up the ghost. The overwhelmed simp momentarily gave in and tried adjusting her coochie position to hit the right spot, but Yao Yao stood up just in time to prevent any further plot activity from occurring. She then threw herself in front of him, insisting that he admit to having feelings for her. But the smash-and-run dude denied having any feelings for her, so she grabbed onto his tie and told him he won't leave the toilet until he insisted he had feelings for her. In the present, the group decided to play a game of truth or dare. When it was Bai Qiao's turn, Yao Yao asked him about his ideal type of girl. He revealed that he liked mecha girls, magical girls, and battle. JK Tang Xin was visibly disappointed upon hearing this, as she had hoped he liked IG models like her. Next, it was Tang Xin's turn, and she chose truth. Ningyi asked her if she had any feelings for Bai Qiao beyond just being classmates. Without hesitation, Tang Xin bluntly admitted to having feelings for him, which took everyone aback. However, Yao Yao wondered if it was the right time to spill such hard facts, while Ning Ye confirmed her curiosity, which she had been having this whole time. Tang Xin elaborated, explaining that Bai Qiao had been her vice president for so long that it was only natural for her to develop feelings for him over time. To prove her point, Tang Xin grabbed Bai Qiao's head and placed it on her lap, which instantly irritated Yao Yao, since that was something she considered their special thing. When it was Ningyi's turn, she grabbed Bai Qiao's head as well, and the loser's head became nothing but a baton. Tang Xin then dared Ningyi to act intimately with Bai Qiao like a real couple, insisting that she passionately kissed Bai Qiao's abdomen for 10 minutes and that he should do the same in return. Tang Xin believed this dare would be impossible for the couple to pull off, since she suspected their relationship was a useless scam. To her surprise, Ningyi confidently climbed on top of Bai Qiao, exposing her midsection, and demanded that he kiss her. Bai Qiao nearly had a heart attack from being so close to a girl, and struggled to keep it together. Ningyi insisted that they had to go through with it, or else suspicions about their relationship would only grow stronger. However, Bai Qiao couldn't handle the situation and tried to push her away. Sensing his hesitation, Ningyi suggested starting by kissing his abdomen first. She began unbuttoning his shirt, which terrified Bai Qiao as he realized that Lulu's get that sticker on his stomach would soon be exposed. When the girls saw the sticker on Bai Qiao's stomach, they couldn't contain their laughter and burst into hysterics, finding the humor in the scene irresistible. Despite the laughter, Ningyi went ahead with the dare, kissing Bai Qiao passionately on the stomach. This bold move left Yo-Yo and Tang Xin nearly frozen in shock, as they never expected her to follow through. A few minutes later, it was Bai Qiao's turn again. Since he had failed to kiss Ningyi on the stomach as instructed, he was burdened with another dare. Tang Xin and Ningyi prepared to unleash a series of challenging dares on him. The first dare required him to have an imprint of the opposite gender on any part of his body. Ningyi was the first to act, imprinting her lips on the cherry boy's neck, which nearly made his brain to shift a little. After which, Tang Xin moved to secure the next part, and just then, she engaged her laser blasters at full throttle, making Bai Qiao visit Cloud 9 for the 40th time today. Meanwhile, Yo-Yo felt miserable, wishing she could join in torturing the crap out of the poor dude as well. However, the battle just commenced between Tang Xin and Ningyi, as both thirsty ladies needed to prove a point on who could deliver the most body wrestling dares to Bai Qiao. Ningyi was asked to carry Bai Qiao, and she carried the weakling like a log of wood, while Tang Xin was tasked with listening to his heartbeat, which she cooked. Next, Ningyi was instructed to feed Bai Qiao a lollipop using her legs, which she successfully executed. White-haired princess was instructed to feed Bai Qiao water using her body parts apart from her hands, and Awakened chose to use her lumptuous chesticles to further his suffering. The torturous dares continued until Bai Qiao realized his life might soon be over if he continued the game with the evil nutcases. Hence, he screamed to the toilet, and Yo-Yo, who also needed some of the steamy activity, dashed after him, leaving the two crackheads behind. Despite their absence, Ningyi, still determined to win the game, asked Tang Xin to continue. Tang Xin hesitated, thinking it would be sus for just the two girls to play truth or dare alone, but Ningyi leaned in and decided to play truth instead. Ningyi then asked Tang Xin if she genuinely had feelings for Bai Qiao, stunning her with the direct question. At that moment, Tang Xin reminisced about her memories with Bai Qiao and questioned herself deeply. Was she truly developing feelings for him, or was she just caught up in the moment? She responded to Ningyi, admitting that she wasn't sure why she liked Bai Qiao. She explained that her life felt worthless and boring, and she needed some flavor and excitement. For now, Bai Qiao was that flavoring agent, but she would eventually move on once she found an otherworthy simp. After that conversation, they all decided to call it a night. Meanwhile, Manhwa's biggest victim, finally away from the absolute psychos, managed to get some much-needed sleep. However, his peace was short-lived. Suddenly, Tang Xin approached his bed and kissed him, waking him up halfway. Just as Tang Xin was about to continue, she noticed Ningyi's presence and asked what her corny was doing there. Ningyi, unfazed, retorted by asking what Tang Xin's white was doing by her man's bedside. Their trash-talking escalated until they suddenly discovered a stubborn pink-haired pest, Yao Yao, sleeping under Bai Qiao's blanket. Ningyi asked Yo-Yao what she was doing under Bai Kyo's blanket, and she told her to get some things done, but Ningyi didn't understand what the heck the crazed person was talking about. Ningyi then turned to Tang Xin and asked the same question. Tang Xin explained that her roommate, Tangerine, was snoring like a depressed donkey, making it impossible for her to sleep. After some back and forth, Tang Xin suggested she would sleep on the couch in the room, while Yo-Yo decided to stay close to Bai Kyo, which left the other girls taken aback. Ningyi, determined not to be outdone, moved toward Bai Kyo's bed and joined Yo-Yao. The two girls struggled for space, but eventually decided to share the bed and enjoy the moment. Meanwhile, Tang Xin, unable to sleep, stealthily moved toward Bai Kyo's bed once more. She leaned in and kissed him on the cheek before quietly retreating. The next morning, Bai Kyo woke up to find Tang Lin staring down at him. He suddenly realized that his three wives were still sleeping on his bed, clutching him tightly. Shocked by the overwhelming situation, Bai Kyo quickly jumped out of bed before his brain exploded from too much enjoyment. Tang Lin explained that she had come to take Tang Xin home and asked for his help getting her to the car. Shortly afterward, Bai Kyo tried to carry the nearly naked Tang Xin, but he experienced a momentary shockwave that felt like he lost a few brain cells. Nevertheless, he managed to carry her out of the room. Just as they were leaving, they bumped into Ningyi, who had just returned from shopping. Bai Kyo introduced Tang Lin to his girlfriend, Ningyi, and Tang Lin found their relationship intriguing. As the boat cruise ended, Auntie Cheng picked up Yo-Yao, and Ningyi's parents arrived to take her home. Tangerine, on the other hand, left angrily by train, frustrated that she hadn't been involved in the intense truth or dare game the previous night, leaving Bai Kyo alone at the dock. Later, as Bai Kyo headed home, he was suddenly intercepted by Tang Lin in a Lamborghini Huracan. Surprised to see her again, he wondered why her ugly was back, especially after taking Tang Xin home. Tang Lin explained that Tang Xin had refused to go home and had run back, leaving her with no choice but to return. She insisted on giving Bai Kyo a ride to school, and for the first time in his broke, miserable life, Bai Kyo hopped into a luxurious car, feeling gassed by the experience. As they drove, Tang Lin seduced him a little, and then brought up his girlfriend, Ningyi. She revealed that she had a feeling their relationship was fake, causing Bai Kyo's face to burn redder than a tomato. Meanwhile, Lulu, who had been waiting for her brother, spotted him in the Lamborghini with another girl. Furious, she unleashed her red neon eyes, ready to confront him about his latest addition to the harem. Later that day, Bai Kyo and Lulu went shopping, with Lulu continuously grilling him about the boat cruise incident. She quickly checked the sticker on Bai Kyo's stomach and was relieved to find it untouched. As she tried to get a better view, Bai Kyo shifted uncomfortably, causing her to back off. A few minutes later, they wandered through the superstore, searching for items to buy. Lulu couldn't resist complaining about Bai Kyo stepping off the cruise boat only to find himself in a rich lady's car without thinking about her. Bai Kyo explained that the Lambo lady was Tang Xin's cousin, who had offered him a ride back. Just then, Lulu spotted a large yellow, beautifully designed fluffy bed with plush pillows and was instantly entranced. She immediately jumped onto the bed and declared that they would both sleep on it. Hearing this, Bai Kyo wondered if he was truly related to this freak, who seemed desperate to be clapped by him. However, Lulu quickly cleared up the misunderstanding and asked why he had so many pretty girls around him, but hadn't made a move on any of them. She added that with the way things were going, she was beginning to doubt if he was more attracted to male sweaty muscles than hot thighs. Bai Kyo paused, realizing her words made some sense. He started to think about the women in his life and how he hadn't been able to fall in love with any of them. So he confessed to Lulu that he felt like he might be under a curse. Lulu hugged him tightly and assured him that he wasn't under a curse. He was just a disgusting moron and simp who was too scared to take action with the women around him. She then advised him to turn over a new leaf, start taking the initiative, and promised to help supervise his progress. A week later in class, Bai Kyo was busy decorating for the Mid-Autumn Festival with Yo-Yo perched on his shoulder. As they worked, they chatted about the upcoming holiday, and Yo-Yo casually asked if Bai Kyo had any plans. Yo-Yo recalled Auntie Cheng mentioning that she had seen Bai Kyo and Lulu shopping at the supermarket a few days ago, likely buying things for the Mid-Autumn Festival. Auntie Cheng also advised Yo-Yo to take advantage of the holiday to spend some time with Bai Kyo, since she would be busy and unavailable herself. Bai Kyo told Yo-Yo that he and Lulu had planned to go camping alone, which secretly thrilled Yo-Yo because she loved camping. However, she tried to downplay her excitement and not appear overly eager. She brushed it off, saying she wouldn't want to spend her holidays admiring the moon in the woods with some disgusting lad, pretending it wasn't how she envisioned her holiday. As Yo-Yo attempted to hang a decoration on the wall, she suddenly experienced a painful inflammation in her toenail, causing her to collapse onto the classroom floor. Baekho, who usually would have taken her to the infirmary, remembered Lulu's advice to man up. So instead of getting help, he decided to handle it himself. He took her legs, removed her shoes, and stared into the shoe like a perplexed weirdo. Yo-Yo, embarrassed, felt her shoes were disgusting and assumed the terrible stench had shocked Baekho's senses. She asked him if he was okay, and Baekho awkwardly noted that she was wearing pantyhose, which would hinder him from cutting her toenail. He asked Yo-Yo to remove the pantyhose, but she refused and opted to go to the infirmary instead. However, when she tried to stand, the pain was so excruciating that she fell back down. Baekho, determined to help, held her legs and cut away the pantyhose after a bit of a struggle. Just as he was about to trim the infected toenail, Yo-Yo, feeling insecure about her feet, nervously asked Baekho if her feet smelled like toilet water. Baekho, knowing her feet smelled far worse, more like rotten fish, didn't want to hurt her feelings, so he lied, saying her feet smelled like roses, which made Yo-Yo surprisingly happy. Just then, Tang Xin walked into the classroom and caught them in this highly sus position. Later that day, Baekho brought food to Tang Xin, who had been practicing all day for Tang Lin's debut performance at the autumn festival. When she saw Baekho, she asked if he was going camping for the festival, and he confirmed it. She immediately chuckled, imagining all the nasty things she could have done if she were going with him. Curious, Baekho asked why she was laughing, and she teased that she didn't want to frustrate his life any further. Baekho then told her he had brought lunch for her, made by Yo-Yo. Tang Xin, unimpressed, thought the food would probably taste like since Yo-Yo made it, so she declined, saying she wasn't hungry. As Tang Xin stood up to head to the bathroom, she suddenly felt lightheaded and collapsed into Baekho's arms. Realizing she had high fever, Baekho quickly called Tangerine for help, but the orange-haired midget told him she was busy and that he should handle the situation himself. Frustrated, Baekho wondered why life kept sending him challenges instead of money. Determined to help, Baekho placed Tang Xin on the emergency table and tried to give her some fever-reducing pills. He attempted to put the pill in her mouth, but she spit it out almost immediately. Realizing he needed to bring down her temperature, Baekho soaked a cloth in water and tried to cool her forehead, but it didn't seem to work. Desperate, the cultured idiot thought of cooling down her headlights, reasoning that it might help. At that moment, Tang Xin opened one eye and slyly suggested that she needed cooling down there too. With unwavering confidence, Baekho moved towards Tang Xin's heavenly region. He shut his eyes, avoiding the sight of anything cultured, and as he ventured into the restricted zone, Tang Xin squeezed her plump thighs around his neck, nearly crushing his neck bone. In that instant, Baekho broke into a cold sweat, almost choking, but then he heard Tang Xin softly whisper that she didn't want to attend the banquet. She only wanted to spend the entire holiday with him. Her words left Baekho stunned. He realized that although Tang Xin loved to socialize outwardly, deep down, she was just a lonely and misunderstood girl. Later, Tang Xin regained consciousness and noticed Tangerine sitting by her bedside. Confused, she asked what had happened. Tangerine explained that she had insisted on going to school despite being sick, which caused her to pass out, and Baekho had carried her to bed. Tang Xin then inquired about Baekho's whereabouts, and Tangerine informed her that he had been dragged out like a helpless puppet by Ningyi. Tangerine further disclosed that Baekho had invited her to spend the autumn holiday with him, suggesting that it would be a perfect opportunity for her to make a move. A few days later, Baekho received a WhatsApp message from Tang Xin, telling him that the autumn holiday was meant for family reunions, and it was inappropriate for him to invite her to spend it with him unless he intended to become part of her family, a far-fetched dream for a brokey like him. After reading the message, Baekho wondered if Tang Xin had been inhaling blunt, because she was the one who had asked to spend the holiday together. Just then, Baekho sensed the presence of a second-rate rookie female ninja and wondered who the circus freak was. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was Ningyi, who explained that she had changed her style for the arcade to blend in seamlessly with the crowd. Shortly after, as they walked to the arcade, Ningyi leaned in close to Baekho and asked him for a favor. She wanted them to act as lovers one more time, but this time she wanted it to be real. When they arrived at the arcade, Ning Yi played every game she could find, leaving Bai Qiao wondering if she was trying to collect tickets to exchange for some grand prize. After a while, Ning Yi amassed an impressive number of tickets, which stunned Bai Qiao. He realized she was actually a skilled gamer, and even thought she should start a YouTube channel like Esho Speed. Still curious about why Ning Yi suddenly wanted them to act like a couple, Bai Qiao asked her directly. She told him to calm the heck down and that he would find out soon enough. Hours later, Ning Yi dragged Bai Qiao to a unicorn ride, explaining that the game's rules required couples to participate, which was why she had asked them to pretend to be a couple. When Bai Qiao saw the silly ride, he couldn't understand why she wanted to act like a couple just to win a gift from a ride that seemed designed for dumb teenagers. However, he figured that Ning Yi had never asked for his help before, and since she was asking now, it must be important to her. Reluctantly, he agreed to go on the ride with her. As they climbed onto the ride, Bai Qiao confidently told Ning Yi to hold on tight, assuring her that winning this ride would be a piece of cake for him. On hearing this, Ning Yi positioned her gyat close to his millimeter-peter, which charged his joystick to the fullest. Just then, the ride commenced, and Bai Qiao's soul nearly left him. Bai Qiao immediately held on to Ning Yi and tried his best not to fall over, but the ride seemed to be controlled by Flash, so Bai Qiao lost control and nearly fell off, but was saved by Ning Yi, who held on to his smelly pants and dragged his soul back. They rode for several minutes with Ning Yi dishing out numerous suppositions that nearly off the MC's brain completely. After a long day of intense workouts at the arcade, Bai Qiao was disappointed that his first date with a girl was a complete disaster. Shortly after, Ning Yi walked up to Bai Qiao excited and told him she had redeemed the price and showed him a tree with decorations. On seeing the tree, Bai Qiao was pissed that he got tossed around like a useless ball because of a worthless tree. However, Ning Yi disclosed to him that the reason she wanted a gift so badly was to be able to give Shushu, who was coming back soon. After saying this, she asked Bai Qiao for another favor, which shocked him. Bai Qiao wondered what favor Ning Yi could possibly want this time, silently hoping it wasn't another crazy ride. Instead, Ning Yi presented him with a card game. She explained that with the autumn holiday approaching, everyone at school was exchanging gifts, and she wanted to give him something special. She didn't want to give him an ordinary gift that could be bought with money. She wanted something meaningful that he would remember. Since he was a gamer, she decided to use her skills at the arcade to win him the gift. Hearing this, Bai Qiao was left speechless. He never imagined that a girl would go to such lengths for him, and since it was the first time he had ever received a gift from a girl, he didn't know how to react. Unfortunately, instead of expressing gratitude, he insensitively told Ning Yi that he didn't have a gift for her and headed home, leaving her regretting that she had gone out of her way to get a gift for his stupid. Following this awkward encounter, Bai Qiao and Ning Yi barely communicated for days. Meanwhile, Bai Qiao went on a mid-autumn camping trip with Lulu, and while they were there, Bai Qiao sensed that something was off. Suddenly, they encountered Tangerine in the woods. Confused, Bai Qiao asked what she was doing there, and Tangerine claimed that she came looking for Lulu, whom she had missed. Bai Qiao wasn't convinced and saw through her disgusting lie. Shortly after, Tangerine started complaining about severe stomach pain and asked Lulu to take her to the nearest restroom. Unbeknownst to Bai Qiao, this was part of a plan she had devised with Tong Xin to get Lulu out of the way. After Lulu and Tangerine left for the restroom, Bai Qiao returned to his tent, only to find Tong Xin inside. She explained that she couldn't attend the banquet she had originally planned on going to because it was filled with Old People Association members, so she decided to take a walk and somehow ended up in his tent while looking for a place to rest. Before she could finish her explanation, the pink-haired psycho suddenly appeared at the camp and playfully smacked Bai Qiao on the causing him to lurch forward and nearly fall. Fortunately, he was cushioned by Tong Xin's massive milkers, leaving him embarrassed. As soon as Yo Yao saw Tong Xin in the tent, she immediately lunged at her, accusing her of being a desperate liar. She claimed it was no coincidence that Tang Xin ended up in Bai Qiao's tent under the guise of looking for a place to rest, especially with her suspiciously revealing dress. Tang Xin didn't hold back either, firing back by asking when Yadiav suddenly developed an interest in camping, noting that her outfit wasn't exactly suited for the outdoors. Bai Qiao tried to intervene, suggesting that since they were all there, they might as well camp together. However, the two menaces were too absorbed in their bickering to pay him any mind. Tang Xin then remarked that they were both playing second fiddle and that the main girl would soon arrive. Yao Yao, undeterred, retorted that she only focused on the threat right in front of her, rather than worrying about some random uncertainty. In a sudden move, Yo-Yo grabbed Bai Qiao and dragged him along the ground for no apparent reason. Watching Yao Yao leave with Bai Qiao infuriated Tang Xin, who tried to retaliate but ended up accidentally ripping her dress, which only made Yo-Yo smile triumphantly. As Yo-Yo was moving, she bumped into Xiao Chun's humongous chest talons and crashed to the ground. Spotting Bai Qiao, Xiao Chun immediately threw herself at him, nearly crushing his useless bones in the process. Just then, Ning Yi arrived at the scene, stunning everyone. She commanded Xiao Chun to have some decency and stop smooching her man with her pleasure pillows. Recognizing their biggest threat had arrived, Yao Yao and Tang Xin decided to team up. They retreated into the tent to devise a plan to take Ning Yi down. Inside the tent, Tang Xin questioned the authenticity of Bai Qiao and Ning Yi's relationship. She speculated that there must be a reason why Ning Yi chose to be with Bai Qiao, as it was obvious the dude got a disgusting face, so it sure wasn't about his looks, and it must be something else. She pointed out that there were over 100 other ugly losers at their school, so why did Ning Yi deliberately choose Bai Qiao for a fake relationship? Tang Xin believed that finding the answer to this question would be their trump card for the night. Meanwhile, at the restroom, Tangerine secretly called Tang Xin for updates on how the night was progressing and whether she was making any headway with Bai Qiao. On the other hand, Lulu grew suspicious, noting that Tangerine had been in the restroom far longer than a normal human being, so she threatened to head back to the campsite if Tangerine didn't finish up soon. Back at the campsite, Xiaokan left, leaving Ning Yi and Bai Qiao alone to sort out their recent misunderstanding. Just as the couple was about to discuss the issue from their last outing at the arcade, they were interrupted by the two toxic girls who had been spying on them from the tent. Yo-Yo and Tang Xin, now surrounding Ning Yi, demanded to know what exactly drew Bai Qiao to her, catching Ning Yi off guard. In that moment, Ning Yi's two brain cells finally clicked, and she realized that answering their question could be a huge mistake. She quickly responded that the question was too personal and that she couldn't answer it. Ning Yi thought about how her answer might affect Bai Qiao and feared he could misinterpret it, so she dodged further confrontation by asking if anyone was hungry. Once inside the tent, Ning Yi noticed that the food Bai Qiao had brought was barely enough to feed even half a person. Yo-Yo then suggested they go hunt for food, pointing out that it was one of the perks of camping. They soon headed to a nearby pond to catch fish. As Yo-Yo cast her fishing line, it accidentally snagged onto Tang Xin's already torn dress. When Yo-Yo yanked the line, the dress flew into the pond, leaving Tang Xin practically naked. On seeing the OnlyFans content, Bai Qiao realized this was exactly like the plot development scenarios he had read about, so he grabbed Yo-Yo to teach her how to catch fish better. As he grabbed her, the insomniac didn't help matters as she began to make some sus body movements that caused intense body heat. So in an attempt to remove himself from the position, they both crashed to the ground. At the same time, Tang Xin, observing how Ning Yi wasn't trying to stop Yo-Yo's advances towards Bai Qiao, began to suspect that the issue between Ning Yi and Bai Qiao might be more serious than she thought. Sensing an opportunity, she launched her own attack on the poor victim. Meanwhile, Ning Yi watched as the two disgusting girls ravaged her man. Wondering why Bai Qiao seemed so lively and playful around Yo-Yo, while he was dead on the inside when he was with her. She began to worry that Bai Qiao might be tired of their fake relationship and was only staying with her out of a sense of obligation. Ning Yi finally realized that it might be time to finally open up to Bai Qiao and tell him how she truly felt about the whole situation. Will Ning Yi finally find the courage to tell Bai Qiao how she truly feels and put an end to the advances from the other girls once and for all? Comment fake girlfriends if you're eager to find out in our part 3. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. As always, thanks for watching.